noise. Noise.
I know, right? She has made that. It's about time for an overhaul. I think need to get that done. So
Your booty must be dead.
Hey, so Dave, I don't know if you know Techromonger and the Funky One, also known as the artistly formerly known as Joel and Mark.
I have no idea.
I've been friends with for quite some time, from DEF CON and Hack RedCon, Hack SpaceCon. So,
what's up, dude?
And Dave's my old boss and great mentor of mine. And yeah, I've known Dave since 2016.
Corrected everything I told him wrong. It's perfect. Love it.
MJ taught me everything I know. I mean, that's his claim to fame. Everything I know.
As a group, we have a lot to answer for, people. Okay, we have a lot to answer for here. I used to think I was responsible for inflicting Wally upon the world, but clearly I'm not. I mean, it takes a village of retards, to inflict him on the world, and we are a village of retards.
I think to a large extent, Wally inflicts himself upon the world.
Yeah,
but that is very well said, sir. That is very, very well said. So you know what? We're absolved. We're fine.
Exactly.
No rebuttal. No rebuttal.
Wally is the Genghis Kong of Eastern United States.
Right. Oh Lord.
Everyone's related to him one way or the other. Let's check your heritage.
That's funny.
I have like 6 family trees, all growing separately.
Problem is they don't fork.
Yeah.
Is that my fault?
No, it's not your fault.
Hey, so all you guys want to take a second? I mean, everybody knows you, MJ, but I don't know if you've ever like introduced yourself, and same with the rest of you guys. Want to take a second and tell us a little bit about yourself that the audience would want to know?
44, birth sign Virgo, German heritage. Oh, I grew up in St. Louis near Wally. Yeah.
Cat dad.
Yeah. I own 3 cats. Kill them all soon, whenever they finally get cancers or whatever,
You're talking about your pets?
Right. Right. Children, pets, whatever you guys can call them. Yeah. Both photos here and there. Like that. And yeah, I've been in the theater of IT since the dial-up days in the 90s. So being a little geeky nerd in high school, you sit there and you all of a sudden you find those streams of 2600, and then all of a sudden you get the magazines from Border Bookstore, then you realize there's a meeting like a couple miles down the road, and I started hacking that, and did a lot of phone freaking, which is like garbage right now, but cutting holes in tents and putting them over a green tree and then making like all kinds of collect calls and that type of stuff. That's what I used to do, break down at 2 a.m. and just charge my neighbor up a good $150, $200 worth of phone bills, that type of stuff. Yeah. Then you had like the red box, and then you were going to pay phones, making phone calls. And I realized I have a cell phone. I don't even have to waste time doing this anymore. So I'm like, well, what's the point? It's telephony hacking at that point.
I remember we would go to the Galleria for these meetings, right? And then somebody, I forgot what his name, I think it was Monroe. He was like, you can reroute any phone into that payphone right there.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, how does that work? He's like, he had a little piece of paper, wrote it down. So we were rerouting the movie theaters calls to the payphone by where we sat, and it'd ring. We'd go up and we'd make deals with people over the phone. Like guys, like, hey man, I'm taking this girl out on a date. I'm like, dude, just come in, ask for Bob, free popcorn. We're good. There's nobody in tonight. Just come on in. And they'd be like, dude, you're the best. Thanks, man. And then the sheriffs would call. They'd be like,
I was gonna say, I think a couple years after, that's when the Jerky Boys got a little bit fun and famous with all their
old school.
Yeah. So I got annoyed with all the phone pranking type of stuff, honestly. I'm like, these are people trying to do their job. Just leave them alone type of thing. But got really bad when I do people who would purposely look up white pages for like anyone who's listening to a phone book with a husband and wife, and then whoever answers the phone, you act like the other one and say blah blah blah's been cheating on you or something like that. And I was like, that's it, done. Nope.
Ooh,
No more phone
yeah.
calls ever again. That's what I want to do is be a home wrecker just because I can. No.
And like I remember when I discovered forums through you, you know, I was like, wait a second, what are you talking about? You know, it was like, oh, there's these things called forums, and like everything's on there. Everything's on there. Like if you want to buy shit with other people's stuff, that's where you go. And I'm like, what?
I have a good intro question for everybody around the table here. When do you think was the glory years of the internet? Because I like to say probably 1998 to 2012 or so, like a couple years after 9/11, things got a little bit weird, but like I think those were the glory days where we just had all kinds of like different websites trying things, and hey, you can play pool on Yahoo. I'm like, wow, let's play pool on Yahoo. You know?
I don't know. Aren't you kind of being a little overly nostalgic though with that kind of question, MJ?
A little bit, yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like maybe almost everyone would answer like, you know, the year that, you know, they were like, you know, first learning about the internet is the golden age of the internet. But I felt a little bit like I just missed it. Like I felt like because I was alive in the 90s, but I didn't have internet yet. I didn't have internet until like the mid 2000s. So once I got it, I did feel a little bit, especially once I got into hacking. I also felt like I missed out on the golden age of hacking, which I think coincided with the golden age of the internet. I think those were like the same time.
that's interesting. I actually think your first statement was a bit more correct. The golden age was kind of the year that you kind of really discovered it. You know, that's kind of your ultimate year, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. And as I'm older probably than most of you on here, my intro to it was earlier on. I mean, I didn't get into it like when DARPA first got into it. I'm not that fucking old, but you know, not that much younger. But I also I didn't come across it the same way. The way I got actually introduced to the internet was actually through DARPANet, but it was through a college professor I knew who was a Harvard professor, and he's like, "Hey, come over here, check this out." You know, and then we just started, and he showed me what URLs were. You know, he showed me what addresses were. He showed me how to cut and paste and actually, you know, how to take things out of URLs and stuff like that and get to different parts of the directories and stuff like that. So I kind of got into it kind of from the academic side of the house, you know, and then it was years later that that I really started getting my geek on. But I was a gamer, I think, before I really got into tech for the sake of tech and got into it as a job. But yeah, I think the golden year was the same thing. Is when I first you know, really started just getting into tech. That was kind of the golden year. I got a question for Technomancer and for Funky One. That picture behind you on the wall, is that a movie picture where they take a slice of each movie?
Yeah.
And next question, is that The Godfather?
It's not. It's
What is
Gremlins.
it?
Gremlins from 1980.
Hold on. Hold that thought.
Oh, please tell me someone else knows of this movie. This man hasn't seen it. Nobody's seen it. It's my favorite thing.
You mean After Midnight, Don't Get Him Wet and all that stuff?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yes.
Of course.
Favorite movie of all time.
My parents' dog is named Gizmo.
Yes.
Yes. Look at
Someone
that.
else who has Froms. Every time I have.
Look at that.
What is that? What is this abstract piece of art you have? And I'm like, it's a From. So okay, so what are those?
What are those?
So one of them is The Godfather, and then the other one is what the hell is the other one? Fuck. I have no idea what the other one is. My daughter's gonna fucking slap me if she hears that. One of them is The Godfather, and I forget what the other one was. But that's so cool. You're the only other person I know that has one of those.
Yes, finally someone.
So, Funky One, let's go with you. Why don't you talk about yourself a little bit? Introduce yourself to the Where's Wally podcast.
Do it in the third person.
It's
Dude,
always
it's
third
not always
person.
third person. I cannot do that. My English is not that good. My name is Mark. I got into hacking primarily in college. I went to school for it, so I took more of a traditional route than most. I currently work at Blackline Security, doing attack service management, so continuous risk monitoring from an external perspective. Pretty much salary bug bounty hunting at the end of the day. So yeah, then I volunteer my time with a couple of different competitions and helping mentor some of the old college students that I'm still friends with. So yeah, that's about it.
You say you do bug bounties?
Yes, I do on the side, but you know, here and there.
I got the chance to actually help out with like Intel's first bug bounty program that we did at B-Sides last year, and that was pretty cool. I never actually got to sit in on one of those before, and it was like the first time actually Intel actually hosted an external bug bounty. That was really cool. We gave out, I think we gave out like $5,000 in bounties, $4,000 of which we actually gave out in the room when they were actually submitting the bounties, which is pretty cool, right? You know, we actually were able to triage them and work them all the way through the pipeline and actually pay out like $4,000 in bounties, like within like 8 hours or something like that.
That's sick. I would love to do one like in person with a ton of other hackers in the same room. All of mine's been, you know, like locked away in my little office, you know, testing a site for 8 hours and hoping to find anything on
And
it.
you never get paid the same day. That never happens.
Exactly. You never
No.
get treated the same day.
No,
You usually like sitting there for at minimum a week waiting for it. So
Yeah, and that was the goal. The goal was literally to be able. Well, the dude that ran, and I forget, Chris Hoyt is the guy that actually ran it. If that name means anything to you, and he was just like, I want to give away. His goal was like to give away $10,000 during the bug bounty, the bug hunt and stuff. But he was just like, but I want to be able to give away $4,000 or $5,000 the first day. I want to get someone paid like that day, because that never happens from what I was told. You know, and we were able to push through, like, I want to say 3 or 4 of them, but people got paid that day, dude. It was wild.
that's sick.
Yeah, it was wild.
I want to do one in person so bad. That sounds like so much fun.
Yeah, it was cool. We ended up with we got like a suite at the Westin, and we had a whole bunch of gaming boxes set up. And then, you know, we released targets every like 5 hours, right? So they had rolling targets that they actually had live. And we even allowed people, we even said, you know, if you want X number of like Amazon credits, you know, you can even hack the firmware and hack the platform, you know, go here and you get free 25 tokens and stuff, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it was wild. It was just, I never sat through one of those before. And it was just wild watching these dudes who were sitting in the room, just hacking on the code, banging on the CSS pages, banging on the entry pages and stuff like that. And then you just saw, oh, I got something. And then you watch them submit it, watch them. It was wild.
That's sick. We need to do more of those. We need those to come back.
Yeah, it was wild. There's a buddy of mine and Wally's named Marco Figueroa out of I think Marco's down in Austin right now. He runs the generative AI bounty for Mozilla, and they do live hacking events as well at most of their cons and stuff like that. And that's some wild stuff. Finding generative AI vulnerabilities is wild.
That's crazy.
That's an emerging field right there. That's
I know.
Yeah.
Well, it's meta, right? You know, when you actually think about it, it's like a meta vulnerability, because if you can dick with the interpreter and you can make escapes, you could do that theoretically across OpenAI, this implementation, that implementation, the other implementation. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's like one of those things that's got legs for like the next 10 years.
Yeah.
One of the,
we should come back to this. We should definitely come back to this, because we need to talk about like reasoning and agents and how it's going to make everything worse. And yeah, that's a whole rabbit hole.
Whenever we get to that, remind me to talk about the war collar guy. He was the one who broke the DEF CON AI and got a black badge for it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Techromonger, you're up, buddy.
Cool. Hello everyone. I'm Joel, aka the Techromancer. It's the Techromancer, by the way.
Techromonger is
not that it really matters. There's so many.
Whatever. It's the same thing.
It's okay. At least
No, it's really not, Wally.
I know. It's my bad.
This morning asking you what my handle was.
But yeah,
I know.
anyway,
I forgot.
Yeah, I know. Read the description of this video. Another one. It's like for
redacted.
OPSEC reasons.
It's redacted for OPSEC reasons.
And then I'm like,
Yeah.
I forgot.
Anyway, yeah. So basically, I also work for Black Lantern. I'm lead dev, so I do a lot of coding. Not as much pen testing as I used to, but I get to write the tools that pen testers use. So I sort of live vicariously now. I got my start as a sysadmin, doing basically IT calls in the oil field in North Dakota, and that's when I started getting interested in cyber. So
That's
yeah.
wild. You actually started in the IC world, in the industrial controller world. That's wild.
Well, so I didn't work so much with the industrial control systems, but I did do basically we were responsible for the IT systems for the majority of like the companies around the oil. So like for example the trucking companies, everything from like the hotels to the trucking companies to the law firms. Basically small town, lots of oil activity, and we were just doing all the IT work. So like servers, networking. Like there were days that I would go out into the field because it got so cold that the wireless equipment would fail, and so I'd have to mount new access points like in like the dead of winter in North Dakota. Not the funnest days, but I learned a lot. So yeah.
That's wild. So that's interesting. So you actually got to see some of your first experiences were some of the worst implementations of IT combined and conjoined systems.
You have no idea.
Well done, sir. The light must stay green. The IC controller must be open.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so there, I have to tell you this one story. So I was sent out one time to this remote site. This was about 2 hours out of town, and it was a granary. So it was like this giant warehouse where they would store grain, and they had like a big garage for their tractors and everything. And their internet had gone out, and so I was there to basically figure out what had went wrong. So I spent the first hour tracing cables and trying to find where their internet came in because they didn't even know where their internet came in. I finally found it, and it was in the actual warehouse where the grain was being stored. And the network rack was right next to the door, and they had left the door open, and the network rack had become covered in snow. The entire network rack was buried in snow. And that's why they didn't have internet. So anyway, yep.
That's great.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's the reason why gas.
Dave, you're up.
Like I said, I kind of got into tech and hacking in a roundabout way. I ended up getting an MCSE back in the day, and got a job in like 20 minutes after I got my final certification for my MCSE. Back when you used to get a TechNet subscription with your MCSE. I mean, literally, that's how long ago it was. MJ knows what I'm talking about. And got a job in like 20 minutes as a sysadmin, kind of like Techromonger was talking about. My first experience was as a frontline sysadmin, and that's how I got my. That's what kind of pulled the thread for security. We had a T1 line with nothing in front of it between us and UUNet, and I was just like, this doesn't sound like a good idea. So I bought a book called Building OpenBSD Firewalls, and that was my first experience in foray into InfoSec and security. It was I bought it as a bundle, how to build an OpenBSD firewall and the cuckoo egg, right? And that was kind of who hasn't read the cuckoo egg, right? And that was kind of my first experience, and then it's kind of been down a rabbit hole ever since, and it's been a good career. InfoSec's always interesting. Hacking's always interesting. I
want to pick your brain on that OpenBSD firewalls. That sounds kind of interesting.
It was basically it was a streamlined OpenBSD install with custom filters. Really, it just stripped everything down and only compile in the 3 or 4 protocols you want to go through the firewall, and everything else is killed off. So it was kind of minimalistic.
Did you use IP tables at all?
It was actually a little bit before IP tables became popular and prevalent, right? You know, it was literally just as Marcus Raynham was doing as some of his first writings on the stuff that would then become the Gauntlet firewall. You know, and this was when you had to assemble all your proxies into something you called a firewall. There wasn't actually the concept really of what a built firewall was. You had to say, this is the kernel I want, and these are the 5 things I want compiled into it, and then hope to Christ your stuff doesn't crash and, you know, give you ridiculous throughput over, you know, overhead and everything else, you know, going from one side, you know, to the other. It was well before the concepts were really well developed. You know what I mean, Tech?
Yeah. So when you hear like a kid complain that IP tables is too complicated, you're like,
I laugh. I laugh. I think one of the defining books I ever read was TCP/IP Illustrated Volume 6.
Wow.
That was kind of my introduction to a lot of stuff. And that's an academic book, really, when you get right down to it, right? It's protocols and RFCs and, you know, and shit like that. And that's the book that will turn you into a packet junkie. You know, that's it right there. I mean, you know, you learn that, you memorize that. Then a year or two later, I took some SANS classes that were taught by a guy named Stephen Northcutt and a guy named Marty Rauch. And this is that, you know, Marty's the guy that created what? Snort. You know, and this is back when he taught the class and stuff, you know, so learned the packet filtering and writing filter tables and stuff like that. You know, and then got to work. And then it's been a Wild West show ever since. And then I met Wally, and it just screwed up my career.
Yeah.
That's the longest.
You know, I think this is your book, Dave.
No, that one's not mine. That's a good one though.
Because when I started working for Dave, I had an okay idea of some terminology, but I had a deep understanding of anything. You know, I obviously knew what an IP address was, but I didn't understand hashes, you know, like I do now, obviously. Dave's saying no. I knew more than Dave gives me credit for, but
Dave can't.
Yeah, no, I had it. I literally,
that,
where I was like a subject matter expert on Intel, and Dave, I gave Dave my idea as early as like our first interview together, right? Like, and I basically told Dave, like, hey, listen, so here's what I've been doing, and I was talking about targeting and intelligence methodology. And I told him right off the bat, I think we can take out the terrorist, put in the hacker. And I was like, and we're not going to have traditional SIGINT, but we're going to have data. And I think that we can apply those same things to it. And it might not work. But Dave was kind of willing to, you know, to go out on a limb and say, okay, well, this sounds right. Because the word that Dave put out was, I'm looking for like a tier 1 Intel guy. And then I guess, if I remember correctly, Dave, like 2 people sent you my resume. If I know.
As a matter of fact, Jimmy was one of them, if I recall correctly. It was.
And then
Jimmy sent me your resume.
And then a friend from Maryland as well. But yeah, and then I had to learn. So, but good thing at the time, McAfee. I mean, our office in Columbia, Maryland, which was insane, right? They had all the resources you needed to learn were there, and then all the experts you needed to talk to were already there. So,
well, so that was kind of the whole awesome. Point of it was the idea came about because nobody was really using methodology, you know, from that particular point of view, right? And Wally comes from a background of tradecraft and methodology, right? That's what HUMINT is. That's what being an intelligence professional is. Everything else is just a domain of information. Cybers and IP addresses and stuff are just a domain of particular information. And if your methodology works, you should be able to snap in a different domain of information and basically come out with some of, you know, with you should be able to produce intel coming out the other end. And through our conversations, it kind of occurred to both of us. It's like, fuck, everything is pocket litter, right? You know, if you understand how you do collections in the human world, you know, when you grab a target, things on them are pocket litter. You look at the stuff that's in their pockets and stuff that's around them, you know, and everything else. It's pocket litter, and you use that to build, targeting packages, profiles, social network analysis, and patterns of life. And it's just like, fuck, that's the same thing in the cybers. It's just got different names. We just have things like IP addresses, packets, domain addresses, the routing tables. It's the same fucking thing, and it took a while to get it right, but damn, when it worked, it fucking worked,
And then instead of taking DNA, it's forensics, forensic things, forensic images. That's the DNA of the task,
Yep.
Hey, can you guys see the comments when they come up on StreamYard?
Who is Frosty? That's a great comment.
Yeah, I know, right? Once again, Dave speaking the truth. Yeah. That's one thing I've always loved about Dave. Comedic, but also he knows his shit and he can be totally serious, but he can explain it to a dumbass Marine like me, right? And here's a crayon.
Let's
eat
bust
it.
out the crayons,
Things
baby.
are better. Things are getting better.
Gotta bust out the crayons.
Hey, so I was talking to some guys about, having everybody on and talking cyber and stuff like that. And a question came up for you two down for Joel and Mark. So they love this. I didn't write it. I'm not going to say his name, but he uses Bbot, right? So one thing I'd like you guys to do is in a minute, explain Bbot and why it's important, why it's awesome. But he said his basically it's kind of not even a criticism, but he said he loves it best when it works with APIs configured correctly and also integration with nuclei. So
yes.
I'm not familiar with nuclei,
Mhm.
but I was wondering if that's something you could go into. Actually, I think I can adjust the screen. Hold on, let me make you guys big. Oh wait, nope, that made me big.
Enhance.
Okay, maybe I click here. Let's do.
You remember when Wally said a few minutes ago he knows a lot more than I give him credit for? This shows that is not the case, gentlemen.
Oh, nope, that didn't work. That didn't work either. Okay, we'll just stay here.
We'll be small.
Okay.
We're okay with being small.
We're fine with this.
Okay, so I'll talk about nuclei. I'll sort of use nuclei as an entry point into Bbot. Okay, so first of all, nuclei is a vulnerability scanner, specifically a vulnerability scanner built for web. So it can do things in addition to web, but it was designed originally to be a web scanner. And so you can think of it a lot like Nessus, except for web. And so it has a whole bunch of signatures or templates that scan for specific vulnerabilities. And it's written in Go. So essentially the idea is you have a whole bunch of signatures, which are just YAML files. And then you have a super fast Golang command. And then you just basically give it all your targets and it just runs all the templates or whichever ones you want it to. So it can detect things for example, there's a template for almost every CVE, so it can detect
is this
shell
technology
shock
being used? Is this OS being used? Stuff like that.
Yeah. So anyway, nuclei is super useful. Every bug bounty hunter uses it. Every pen tester uses it. If unless maybe you work for a company like Nessus who has a closed source proprietary scanner, but nuclei is totally open source. Which is why it's so popular, and it's really been overtaking a lot of the other scanners, I would say, in popularity. So anyway,
does it compare to Wireshark at all?
Yes, I was actually I was just using Wireshark. I don't have to break it out every day, but I have to break it out for CTFs almost every time. Yeah, Wireshark is fun. Oh, quick side tangent on Wireshark. The coolest thing about Wireshark is it can dissect an insane number of protocols. I don't think there's a single program in the world that can dissect as many protocols as Wireshark can. It'll dissect all the web protocols, all the way down the stack from layer 2 all the way up to layer 7, right? But it can also dissect protocols that are captured between circuit board components. If you're a hardware hacker, you can actually tap the communications between your CPU and your storage chip and decode them, and Wireshark will break them apart and oh, this is this is writing, this is adding the read flag, whatever. It's crazy. So yeah, Wireshark's cool.
Where's
Where's it going?
Bebot.
Bebot. Okay.
Yeah, Bebot. So yeah, no, the main thing is
Yeah.
to do.
Okay. So anyway, so Bebot. Bebot's an OSINT tool. It's inspired by Spiderfoot. I made it a couple years back for BLS. We had a big need for automating our OSINT. Everybody at BLS was kind of running different tools, and they all had their own kind of process for doing OSINT. And I really wanted to write one tool that we could trust to basically find everything that we were finding manually. And so the big feature of Bebot, like the most important feature, is that it's recursive. So it's similar to Spiderfoot in that way. Spiderfoot was probably the first piece of code that I really like fell in love with. I remember I had learned Python sort of just good enough to get by before I had discovered Spiderfoot. When I discovered Spiderfoot, I really dived into it because I was fascinated by the recursive system that it has, which is totally unique. Spiderfoot is not, its design is totally different from any other OSINT tool, and the recursion is a big part of that. So anyway, I'm going down my whole. I have a whole talk. I literally gave a talk 3 days ago about this. I'm going to try not give the whole talk, but just like the condensed version.
Can I post the link for your Git in there for Bebot?
Oh yeah.
You're gonna do that.
I'll do it. I'll do it after because I'm not quite done explaining.
Yeah. No, go for it, man. That's why we're doing this. You know.
Okay. So anyway. Okay. So basically, Bebot was a reimagining of Spiderfoot, and I at least for me, it is like the spiritual successor to it because I wasn't able to make Spiderfoot work for various reasons. So Bebot is a recursive OSINT scanner. It is the best, and by best I mean the most comprehensive subdomain enumeration tool. It'll find more subdomains than any tool, and it has a whole bunch of modules that run in addition to the subdomain enumeration. One of those is nuclei, but basically it has modules that will download code repositories. If you put in a target, it'll find that target's GitHub organization. It'll list all their repos, download all their repos, and then you can enable a module that will basically ingest all those repos and search them for secrets. So yeah, we have a truffle hog module. Basically, all of these modules produce data and consume data from each other, and so they all feed each other recursively. And so it's this sort of like recursive loop that runs until ideally there's nothing left to discover, basically. So anyway,
it is also all open source.
It is, yes.
Modules are being written by those in the community. There's been some awesome modules written by people in the community as well. Joel does not do all the coding on it. There also is some new stuff that's come out recently. Presets is one big one, where you can configure your own scan pretty much. So instead of having to type out a 72 character long command and worry about like, oh, did I get this configuration right? You just make a config file and then boom, it works pretty much, right? Mm-hmm. Essentially, in simple terms. And then YAR rules, it's, I don't want to say a step up from nuclei, but it's a little bit more customizable, I guess would be a better word for it. And it can do a lot more specific searches. So for example, say a new CVE comes out. One that I can think of off the top of my head was when the Polyglot library, I think Polyglot.js, I believe the site that was hosting it got taken over or something along that lines. And so now if you were using that library or something similar to it, then it was now just being downloaded from a not safe source, quote unquote. So if you wanted to hunt for something as specific as that, you could make a YAR rule, which would then look for a string on the actual CSS or HTML of the website and be like, okay, cool. Is this library on here? If it is, we find it. It would automatically flag for us and would make a custom alert on Bebot. There are also lots of new things coming to Bebot soon.
Yes, we have a new Bebot project in the works.
Yes, there's lots of new Bebotting always happening. Updates are coming out faster and faster and faster. So yeah, it's full screen that. You should full screen that. That'll make my life a lot easier.
I like the graphical outputs you guys have for Bebot.
Yeah.
It's supported. We have Elasticsearch is supported. We have what's the other integration? There was another big one.
Well, a Neo4j, Elasticsearch, like Splunk. I mean,
Splunk is the other big one.
Yeah.
Elasticsearch and Splunk are two massive ones that have official integrations, I believe.
I like your graphing examples on your GitHub page. Some of those are pretty wild.
Yeah, in my talk, I use those to visualize all the bugs that we had when building Bebop, because we had all these crazy, insane bugs where the recursion just went off the rails and just exploded and did terrible things. And so seeing that happen in the node visualization is kind of fun.
I'm looking for the so Dave, I don't know if I ever showed you. I took some of the Bbot output and I ran it through. I built an algorithm and ran it through Analyst Notebook.
I was gonna guess that you did that. I mean, it looks like
I'm looking for it now.
Real well. Yeah.
If not, I'm gonna rebuild it while we chat, and then it will render, and then I'll
No,
show that.
I'm digging it. I think
It's badass.
well, a lot of this you could enrich the hell out of this kind of stuff, right? I mean, you know, I'm digging
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Nicely done, guys.
Thanks.
I don't even remember which one this is.
I'm just a power
Oh,
user.
you report bugs.
I report bugs.
Reports
I am the
good
bug
bugs.
king. I report every bug I find because our entire majority of our ASM stuff we use Bbot on a daily basis. So I tend to run into the weird use cases, especially running it against 10,000 domains and hoping nothing breaks. And something's bound to break, and when it does, I go and yell at Joel and get blamed and get a shit.
Yep. Get blamed.
Get blamed, my favorite thing.
I get blamed for everything. It's okay.
Exactly.
So anyway,
yeah,
that's pretty much it for Bbot.
Yeah, big things in the works.
Yeah,
Coming soon.
big things coming up.
As while he's working on recreating this Analyst Notebook.
Yeah, I am. That's exactly what I'm doing.
So question for you, Dave. What do you do now? Do you do any OSINT in your job?
Not really. So I work for Intel now. I'm a security architect over at Intel, specifically for the federal team. So I really don't do anything in the OSINT world anymore. I do stuff that relates to firmware exploitation and firmware attacks and things like that against the platform itself. So a little outside of the OSINT world. I mean, I try to keep my hand in it, as much as I possibly can, but it's not really what I do day to day anymore.
I mean, that's still I feel like that's still an interesting sort of like field though, because what's it called? What's that component called? In newer CPUs that are like the enterprise versions that have like a remote management interface built in.
So it depends on the CPU you're talking about. You could be talking about the SMM layer, the VMM layer, or the management engine, or it could be the BMC.
I think management engine is what I was thinking of.
It depends on the generation of the platform you're talking about. And some of the later versions, there's no ME anymore for a whole bunch of really, really good reasons. Or at least it's not really accessible in the way it used to be. But then you got other stuff like the BMC and things like that. The base management console down really, really low. The stuff that comes up right after post and stuff like that. So depending upon what you're looking to do, there's different ways to kind of mess with the platform in the early stages of boot and things like that. But it's not easy. There's a really good vulnerability that just got released on the AMD side of the house that actually talks about microcode vulnerabilities and how you can mess with microcode. So if you really want to see what damage can be done to an actual platform, that's a really good vulnerability to read up on. But the good thing is there's like 100 people on planet Earth that understand microcode. So it's extremely difficult to do, because you get it wrong and basically you have a brick, a brick that never ever works again.
I've always wondered about microcode, and I actually have lots of questions about microcode, because I remember when I first started learning Linux, I basically learned Linux by installing Arch Linux, which took me like so many tries to get right. You're just trying to get a bootable system, But one of the things that surprised me a lot was microcode, because in Arch Linux, I can actually download a microcode. Like they have repos that will automatically download and flash your microcode that's supposed to like fix certain bugs that are like, you know, firmware related and sort of improve. Like another thing was like supposedly flashing a different version of microcode could like improve your power efficiency and stuff. And like, how does that work? Like, is it firmware or like? Because it's not the same as the BIOS, right? Like, how does the OS?
No, it's first of all, take the OS and firmware even out of the mix of where you're trying to wedge that in, because you're actually messing with the machine code at that layer. You know, so you're actually working with the CPU with language that the silicon kind of understands. You know, so it's extremely dangerous to I'm not saying don't do it, by the way. I'm just saying if you get your microcode wrong, your silicon can theoretically operate differently, because it can change things. And I'm not, by the way, I'm not a I couldn't tell you how to write microcode. That's not the area that I work in and stuff like that. All I know is that there's a reason that you don't necessarily mess with it. You're literally talking about architectural set instructions. You know, literally, you're talking that low level. So theoretically, you might be able to argue that if you know how to write microcode, you can change a certain architecture to be like a different architecture theoretically. But it imposes significant overhead into the for obvious reasons. You know, if you're trying to make an x86 act like something else, it may want to act like that, but it doesn't necessarily have the horsepower or the throughput, you know, or the ability for, you know, the silicon to operate that way. So even though you may change certain instruction sets, it doesn't mean it's going to be efficient when it does it. That's all.
So microcode, does it reside in the CPU or on the chipset, or does it reside in your OS, in the memory of your OS?
So that's a good question, and don't take what I say as being correct, because this isn't my area of expertise, so I could be wrong. It's certainly not in the OS. It's at the platform layer. Now, how that gets done and how that goes from volatile RAM to non-volatile to everything else, don't ask me. You know, it's not the side of the house that I work in. It's not. But my understanding again is that you're changing that low level stuff, but take the operating system out of it. It's way before that actually ever happens.
Okay.
Apologies for not giving a better answer, but it's just not the side of the house.
Well, no, it's you know, this isn't a job interview. Obviously, I was just curious because I didn't know either. Like I didn't know anything at all about microcode. I was kind of like curious about it.
Yeah, you can get into the emulation of certain different architectures, you know, and things like that, and you can get different architectures to do different things through microcode. But again, it's a question of efficiency too, because the platform is made to do certain things, right? You know, there's certain electrical paths and everything else that you know, and when you're having microcode wanting to change certain things, it may do it, but it doesn't do it efficiently. You know, so it's going to put ridiculous amounts of overhead into it even before you get to the OS, because you're just changing, you know, the way that L3 and L4 and memory fundamentally functions at that layer, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
You're dicking with the physics of the silicon in some cases, which is fun, but just don't expect to play World of Warcraft on that bitch later, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh man, like imagine though if you had malware. Imagine if you had malware in microcode, like that's like the ultimate rootkit.
So
Like
read the Google AMD microcode vulnerability. It's a really good walkthrough of not that scenario that you're talking about, but related things that you can actually do, because it's a vulnerability, I think, in the microcode processor. You know, so it's getting it to run things it shouldn't necessarily be running, if you know what I mean. So it's an interesting vulnerability to read up on, but again, it's really hard to do. But do it, hack it. That's what we're here for, right?
Somebody will.
No, it's wild. You're getting into complex circuits and all kinds of stuff when you're talking about microcode. So someone like me is just going to mess up and break something, and not even in the good hackery kind of way, just because I did something dumb.
Oh, Mark, you want to answer the ASM question?
ASM is attack surface management, and there's a lot of it's been a I don't say a growing field in cyber recently, but I've been seeing a lot more job postings go up for ASM and attack surface management, or for EASM. They've been trying to decide. It's pretty much what it is. It is bug bounty hunting, only privatized. So instead of putting open season on all your websites to all hackers across the world, you would hire a company like Black Lantern Security, or I know there are some other companies that currently are developing a program and have one out. And it pretty much is, we go through all of your external assets, scan them, do the OWASP top 10 tests on them, and see if there's any low-hanging fruit, any simple things like SQL injection. If you're in like certain industries, we'll check for like customer or PHI disclosure, things like that. It's to try and prevent things from like shadow IT from spinning up 20 to 30 websites one day, all that are super insecure, and then forgetting that they exist and leaving it insecure on your stuff. So normally we use Bbot to help us find a lot of those things, because it will help us to find those things that the company may have forgotten exists. So essentially, in as simple as I make it, it's privatized bug bountying. Follows a very similar process. They just get for BLS uses a monthly reporting scheme. So every month they get an update on being like, okay, cool, we found X amount of new vulnerabilities. This is what they are. This is what they affect. Cool. And so we primarily govern ASM into three main tenets, which is asset management, asset discovery, and then threat intel. So if something like a new CVE pops up, we'll write a YARA rule or a nuclei template, and we'll scan our client's entire external attack surface, just for the sake of making sure that they're covered for the just in case of brand new vulnerabilities. So.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, Analyst Notebook worked.
Hey, Funky, got a question for you. Got a follow-up question for you. Do you find some industries are better than others at understanding ASM? Like, do you find like you would think that financial industries kind of get risk, right? So that you would figure that's a good play for them. Do you find that certain industries are more apt to look into ASM than others, or no?
From my experience with it, we have a wide range of clients currently that are looking into ASM as a service. A lot of companies are open to the idea, and some companies opt for just public bug bounty programs. A lot of the bigger companies, obviously like Intel and Tesla, SpaceX, those kinds of things where the scope is massive and they want to pay out. They can pay out massive amounts of money. They can do that. So I don't think there's one industry necessarily that is more opting towards ASM. I think since it is, I don't want to say it's a newer fact of cyber, but it's a newer way of thinking about cyber. I think that a lot of the industry is slowly moving in that direction, just with how many new programs I've been seeing pop up and how many new solutions have been popping up for it recently. I'd say it's gaining traction amongst different industries. I just still think it's in its very, I don't want to say it's baby phase right now, but it's, people are still figuring it out.
Yeah, it is true. I feel like the finance, even if you don't quote unquote get security as a finance company, you still have the benefit of having enough security budget to actually buy things and hire people.
Yeah, also,
which helps a lot.
I'm 99% sure. Somebody quote me on this if I'm wrong. Don't banks have to have a pen test every single year to remain FDIC insured?
I think any payment processor or any.
I'm pretty sure they do. Well, I don't know if an ASM would count as a pen test, and necessarily that gets into some semantics that I'm unsure of off the top of my head, because
that's really hard. In the MSP space, they haven't really defined what a pen test is. We're like, oh yeah, here's an application we'll run against you guys, and thanks for talking to us every year. We'll look forward to it. Yeah.
When I interned, I did consultant work, and I did pen tests. It was just like, quick, week in, week out, done. Turn them and burn them. And we did a lot of banks in that time, because they could just quickly be like, all right, cool, you tested us for a week. In reality, we may find nothing in that 1 week. We may find a ton of things in that 1 week, So I wish there was more stress amongst financial institutions. That would make me feel better about having my money in a bank. But you live and you learn.
Well, I guess you, man.
I learned in the past too that if you say you have some IT entity, doesn't matter who it is. It can be some drunk guy in like middle of Ohio or something like that. He says, I did a pen test for his company. But here's my business to business certification. Here's my IT thing, and they're insured for the next year. Perfectly fine. Cybersecurity, good.
Or automated pen tests. Those are emerging, and hey, I'm gonna click go. This is really quick work. So let's see what happens.
Don't show that picture. Oh, okay.
Oh. That's why Twitter's bad, man. Or X, it's so bad if you're trying to show something because if you look up Mars, like there's some prawn on there. Like Mars is somebody's fetish, and they want to show
it's also just a fire hose too. I mean, just the amount of data you're going to get per query is ridiculous. Even when it's metered, just the amount of the amount of data you're going to get from any query is ridiculous.
And I'm just thinking right now, the first porn that comes from the moon and Mars will be worth millions.
Wow. Well, I think officially no one's done it in space yet.
Right.
Because it's actually not allowed to. Like if you like on the ISS, you're not allowed to. Why do you
not allowed to doesn't mean it hasn't been done.
I was going to say, why is that your fun factor of the day?
We talked about this at ShmooCon. Like it was like, and then like somebody was like, it's actually by physics, it's actually pretty hard to do it in space. I'm like, huh, that's interesting.
Wally's like, challenge accepted.
Follow me, I know the way.
It has to have been done on the vomit comet, though, right?
Come on. The first thing they did when they got up to the space station was, you wanna? It's the first thing they did. Come on.
I don't know. Like, I just don't know what astronauts' personalities are like. Like, what's like the stereotypical personality of an astronaut? Because, like, have you guys watched the moon landing video with Ryan Gosling, or the movie? Yeah, it's like Ryan Gosling is Neil Armstrong. Anyway,
I don't know.
okay. Well, anyway, his personality in the movie is portrayed as like this very logical, very sort of like Boy Scout, almost like emotionless, like machine-like person. And I don't know if Neil Armstrong is actually that way, but that's very much the way they portray it. So that's the only reason why I might think that they didn't immediately do it. But if
you'd have told them, Neil, it's for science, he'd have been right in.
Yes, they would have.
It's for science.
If you told them that it was for science, they would never have questioned it.
It's for research purposes only.
He did come from Purdue, so it's plausible.
Oh my god. Oh.
So still rendering, Wally?
Yeah, it's resource intensive. Oh, there we go. I changed the
Wally, it's like when we used to try and render some of those Hughes Masters. Remember that? Oh my god.
We'd use a separate computer, and for one day we tried to put all of Russia together with all of China, and it literally took like 30 something hours.
Yeah. Find all the correlations between them.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually one of those defining moments that Wally and I actually had. Is we would find connections between infrastructures that number one, nobody had seen before, but number two, people doubted existed. They were just like, you'd never find connections between XYZ's infrastructure and Z's infrastructure and stuff like that. So it's like, what's that on the screen? That's a connection, right? Just so it was we were able to find it and prove it, but people just doubted the commingling of infrastructures for the longest period of time. Remember those arguments, Wally?
Oh yeah,
a lot of pushback on that.
So was this specifically Chinese and Russian infrastructure?
Yeah,
all sorts. I mean, but yes, but
all sorts.
So I've always wondered, like they're both communist countries, right? But like, how closely do they actually align? Like, are they pretty close allies, or do they kind of keep each other at arm's length?
Well, don't forget, they could hate each other. It doesn't necessarily mean their downstream operators are not operating and exploiting the same networks and utilizing and building out what turns out to be on the same infrastructure. The two have nothing to do with each other necessarily. So just because they necessarily hate each other politically doesn't mean they're not all on the same boxes doing the same exploitations, right? And that's kind of the route that we were going down was, I'm not drawing a political analogy here. I'm just saying they're using the same networks and some of the same jumps and some of the same tools, or at least they're showing up that way. But I mean, I get what you're saying. And I'm not trying to dismiss it or anything. I just think when you get down to the layer of the operator, it's a different. It's a resource question, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know
I
what I
agree,
mean?
sir. It reminds me of Kuwait. Like, what's that guy's name? Walker, Texas Ranger. What's his real name?
Chuck Norris.
Chuck Norris is coming to space. You know, that's what I would write.
Oh, man. Well, so anyway, that's so interesting though. That's so interesting about like those connections, because something you can do that also like with Bbot. So that's one of the things I was actually messing around with when I first made it. Was I basically allowed it to output to Neo4j. Have you used Neo4j before?
Yep. Oh yeah.
Not personally, no.
It's a graphing database that basically just it graphs everything and allows you to explore it in like a GUI. So you can see the relationships and the nodes and run queries on them. Anyway, it's used in, it's what Bloodhound uses, which is an Active Directory. Like you'll find escalation paths in Active Directory. Bbot, you can scan 2 targets, output them both to Neo4j, and just query all the nodes and actually see where their infrastructure overlaps. So if they use the same cloud provider, you can see things like that, or the same email provider.
Oh, I dig it. That actually would be pretty fascinating to actually see what pops. 2 or 3 jumps down to see actually where they go.
Yeah, it's
and one use case that Dave and I used it for was when Turla breached one of the Iranian APTs, and then they started conducting attacks. And everybody's like, "Oh my God, Iran's on the thing." I'm like, "I think it's Russia."
That's not them. Yeah, that's not them. It's like, nope, that's Russia. That was pretty funny. They got in and changed all their passwords and took away all their access. That was a good couple of weeks worth of work, Wally.
They even had the dashboard, which was awesome.
That was great.
So yeah, this one turned out. So it half turned out. Okay, so what I did was, this is the type or the source, and let me hold on one second. Let me look at
code repositories. Okay.
Yeah, let me look real quick in my downloads. Give me a sec. Oopsie.
Nobody wants
vitiligo.
Nobody wants to see
you get a tattoo there, Wally?
That's my son's vitiligo. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he gets medicine, so every 3 weeks I take pictures to see if it's opening or closing. Okay. So that is the event is, oh shit, fuck. Oh, never mind. Okay, we're good. The event type that's what that is. So that's from code repository. Mm-hmm. So it's either scan, DNS, org, social, etc.
This was eBay.com, so you can see all these repos. Yep. All these repos are eBay's GitHub repos.
Yep. Absolutely, yeah. And then let me zoom out. And these single ones, I don't know why. Oh, I see. Oh, okay. All right. So that's kind of the legend.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I know what I did wrong there, which is probably why it's okay. Yep.
That's just your map legend, isn't it, Wally?
Yeah, that's typically how I describe it. Yeah, but I'm going to get rid of this because these ones create a problem. So
yeah, those are all of eBay's Microsoft tenant domains. That's a really good way, by the way. If you talk about enriching data, so like if you take a domain that's that belongs to a company, like eBay.com, Tesla.com, and you can actually, without authenticating at all, ask Microsoft what other domains are part of that Microsoft tenant, and so you can see basically 100% confidence on which domains are directly related.
We're never going to see anything in the big window and the big cluster, but that's probably eBay itself, I'd imagine, or one of the big nodes. So
what do we got here?
Yeah, that's not bad. I mean, I would definitely all the links I would certainly clean up, but I threw this together. But this is kind of how it works, right? Like you take an IP address and you enrich it, virus total, let's say, right? it gives you everything. It gives you the SHAs associated with it, domains, domain siblings, basically any infrastructure that's associated with that, including the host. And so 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, you know, you don't want to go 7 though, at all. You never go 7. It's like, you know, you don't really want to go past the host, because what's that going to tell you? It's just a bunch of stuff on the host when you're looking at the actual, you're looking at the edges. And the one thing I was always trying to get people to realize is, you know, when you got a let's say the firewall logs, and these are blocked or not blocked, and they're like, companies in general and the government look at all that in it's a singular event, right? So, but it was blocked, so it's okay. And my argument was, that's part of a network, you know? So even though you blocked that one, you blocked one, but did you block the other 3,000 that, you know, may not have been recognized as malicious at this point, right? So that's where some of this comes in. And then the way I tried to explain it for a while is like, okay, let's say you got 300 indicators blocked, let's say just an email alone.
Mm-hmm.
Were you attacked by one person 300 times, 300 people one time? Or is it a mix? Is it groups of people combined with individuals? And this is a way that you can visually show that. It's like, okay, so infrastructure A, Russian hacker group, you know, they've created their own infrastructure, they own it, etc. So you saw these 2, but you didn't see the other 400 have been used yet, and some of them are just waiting to wait. They're innocuous right now. So yeah, but it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool taking the intel and turning it into cyber, right? I mean, you know, so any O4J can do something similar. Same with Gephi. You can do something similar to this with Gephi. It's just not as not as robust, but you can also make it 3D.
Yeah, Neo4j couldn't handle near as much of this data. Like Neo4j maxes out at like 1,000 nodes. It'll just stop loading. And yeah, I'm actually pretty amazed. Does this use the GPU? Do you know?
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it sure does. It's very GPU intensive. Yeah. But yeah. And so what you can do with criminal networks, right? You have the indicators of compromise, you have the artifacts, right? And so what we did at least at McAfee was like, I built a chart per attack, right? And then we labeled it, and once we got it down, what we wanted to, because I didn't really understand how like a SHA-256 touched like an IP address, right? So we had to go through, here's all the infrastructure, right? And here's how it touches. And then I had to figure out how to build it. And then I probably should have started. The advantage of Analyst Notebook is you can't have duplicates. And in the cyber realm, if it's an IP address is an IP address, a SHA is a SHA, et cetera. You know, so that's advantageous to the program right off the bat, which is one reason it works. So we would build, like, I don't know, let's just Turla attacks satellites over Eastern Germany, etc. You know, so we take the artifacts from that attack alone, build a chart.
Correct.
And then the next attack comes along, build a chart, and then you merge them together, which we call merge. And then from there we have master merges. So a master merge would be all of the infrastructure for 2018 that was used in a hack, and then one tier from that initial indicator of compromise.
Yep.
And then you put that all together, and then we would, also color code, labeling. So and I memorized all that at some point where it's like, okay, well, red frames and green links, that's Turla. APT28 is purple links, and so I could look at it and say, okay, we're like, okay, well, hey, look at this. There's kind of a central hub. I bet this is part of the state, instead of purchased infrastructure. And you can answer all sorts of questions.
Yep. And a lot of the point is after we spent the time, or when Wally spent the time making the original charts and the original keys and the original code keys and stuff like that, when something new came in, it broke out very, very quickly. So that was the point, is to do all the work beforehand. So when a new artifact came in, we didn't have to do this again. Bam, or we knew it was Turla, or bam, we knew it was this, or we knew it was that. We knew where it went in, because if Wally, bring up your other chart again, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Bring up that other page again.
Yeah, hold on one second.
The power isn't in the huge cluster. The power is in the stuff that spawns off, right? You know, it's the Pareto principle, 80-20. You don't want what's in the big cluster. You want the stuff that's spired out. And that was the whole point of doing a lot of the templates and stuff, is so it wouldn't appear in the big artifact cloud of 82 bajillion IP artifacts. You know, it would break out to the ones that actually coincided with the small amount of information that was hashes for Turla, hashes for this, an IP address for this, an IP address for that, that would take it away from the main cluster. And that's where the power of doing actual semi-attribution came in, where we could actually make higher confidence statements and stuff like that, which you really couldn't do prior to some of the stuff that we were actually doing, because everything was just in this big, huge blob because of the duplicate problem that Wally was talking about. You put it into Analyst Notebook, it removes a lot of the duplicity.
So you guys had sort of a database that you just maintained that was essentially like this graph, and you just add to it constantly.
Yeah.
Yep. You add to the master. Yep. And then I'd have masters for unknowns.
Yep. And there were several masters, right? Wally, I mean, everything. Otherwise, you just couldn't work with it because there was just too much data. And honestly, there wasn't enough horsepower in any one particular server to deal with it, because Analyst Notebook is kind of a resource pig. You know, so Wally made the smart move of saying we would have an Iranian master, we would have a DPRK master, we would have a China master, we would have a Russian master, and then we would attempt to do big masters and stuff like that, but it would blow out just like every single time, though, right? Well,
oh yeah, I'll actually I'll go on my drive and I'll pull up a master here in just a sec.
Yeah. So when something new came in, so like next week, like one of the things we would be asked a lot of the times was, okay, we just got this new hash and such group says it's such and such of a target package from this hacker group. What do you guys think? And we would be able to throw it against the masters and say, well, it doesn't correspond to anything that we've seen in there, but it has artifacts that give us this, that, and the other thing. So we could, you know, take new information and, you know, work it against the existing sets. Oh, it doesn't fit into any of the existing Russia stuff, but look at that. It's interestingly touching these two DPRK things. You know, it allowed us to do really interesting little correlations like that. But Wally and I were always very, very careful about the terminology that we used when it came to words like attribution and who did it, right? You know, we were always very careful about that. And that's something Wally drilled into my head, is that it's called low confidence for a reason. It's called medium confidence for a reason. It's called high confidence for a reason, and know the differences between them, because you don't want to say one when you mean the other.
Yeah, and like how sure can you be? Like, even if you have a high confidence like IOC, like look at what happened at the summer 2011 Olympics, winter 2011 Olympics in South Korea. North Korea hacked into the Olympics, and Russia hacked into the Olympics because their athletes weren't allowed to compete because they were doping and they got disqualified. So Russia hacked into the South Korean Winter Olympics, but made it look like North Korea by using a North Korean like IOC in their malware.
Yeah, you see that all. You see that all the. You don't see that all the time, but you see that a lot of times when one group will use, you know, another group. Why do you think everything looks like China, right? You know, it's because at a period of time, Chinese IOCs and Chinese tradecraft was very, very highly documented. So everybody tended to hide in the noise, right? Because, oh, it's just China again, because it's easy to make it look like, you know, it came from Comment Crew or something like that. Just use a certain type of exploit and a certain type of website, and it's going to flag off of this particular signature, right? And it looks like China, right? So yeah, you're spot on. Is you don't want to make too many assumptions, or you want to bracket it by saying, look, based upon the current state of attribution, we are highly confident that it is this, and this, but we leave room for error. So you just, when you make an intelligence statement, you bracket it with those things, and you always leave room for the possibility of error. But the whole point is that even if you give the customer a low confidence solution, they can make a decision based upon a low confidence solution. They just make it based upon the confidence of the statement that you gave them or the intel that you gave them. Will they make a different decision if it's medium or high? Certainly, but they can still make a decision based upon low confidence intel or medium confidence intel. You just got to preface it by saying it's medium intel, or it's low confidence intel, or it's high confidence intel. That's all, and then you're good to go.
I feel like I feel like we don't think about that as much. Where like all the CSI shows and all the fancy, they're always, everything is always like 100% confidence.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone like, they get the intel and like, oh, okay, now we know this changes everything. But it's like, dude, the analysis paralysis that you would have, like having to decide between like 4 different low confidence reports that are all conflicting, like it's not like that in the movies.
Funny that. No, they have to get resolution within that 45-minute time span before the episode ends, right? Some doors got to get kicked down, and somebody's, they have to have resolution, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you're spot on correct, is that it's never like that. And, again, one of the things that Wally really drilled into my head is, since Wally came from the human intel world, right? That's lives are in danger and stuff like that. And you want to preface all your intel because you want the right lives to be in danger. You don't want the wrong lives to be in danger with the wrong types of intel. So you want to make sure you're giving the best intel you can, but prefacing it by saying what's the level of veracity of the intel, because when you're kicking down doors and stuff like that, you don't want to give people bad intel. You want them to make the best decision on the best intel that they can. And Wally drilled that into my head long ago.
So I have a question, because you guys mentioned like you're always sharing data. Like if you have a database like Analyst Notebook and you're constantly ingesting new stuff, and you don't have to answer this. I don't know if this is like technically classified, but I was just wondering like what data formats do you typically exchange data in? Like when you're getting intel from places, is that standardized, or are people just throwing like CSVs and JSON, random JSON at you all the time?
Well, you can export in a lot of different ways. Right, like so I'll actually show you real quick.
Oh my God!
Is Analyst Notebook
this
used
is
by
Gameradon in Ukraine?
Wow,
this is 2022 Gameradon in Ukraine.
I'm getting.
I was trying to find a big one, but I only have one drive plugged in, so it's yeah.
But there, a lot of other stuff goes behind some of these things. So I think one of the things you're kind of alluding to is what if some of the IOCs are not shareable? Right? Or are there different levels of intel within a sheet or something like that? The answer to that could be yes. So not all parts of it may be shareable, but it may be in a CSV, but not all of the stuff gets exported.
That's the problem. That's the problem with exporting, right? Is that like you also have to flatten it.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the stuff is not flat. We had this issue with Bbot a lot, where like once you export it to a CSV, you lose so much data, so much context, it's impossible to reconstruct it again.
Yeah, JSON is generally the area to go with when it comes to stuff like that, right?
Yeah, we can export that way. And the other thing that Dave and I had through, let's say, folks who really are in the know, we would get data on that we could share where they would be like, this is APT28. And it was like a super high confidence. This is what we're saying it is. And we're just like, okay, cool. I wish I had a better example, but so like this pinkish color, purple color, that's Gameradon, right? And then we have, come on, don't die on me now, Cletus. Oops.
Is Analyst Notebook used like throughout?
This is it's all service branches, all Five Eyes, and all IC. Yeah.
Do you know because it seems strange that it would be it's strange that it's not an in-house developed tool, right?
Well, it started the Brits actually owned it first, and then the DEA took it upon themselves to buy it and use it, and that's how they did analysis. Basically, okay, think of an old FBI movie where they have a corkboard and they have pictures and they have strings going from point A to point B. This is the digital version of that. And they used it against who was that cartel leader in Colombia? They have shows about him.
Oh yeah, Narcos. Pablo
Pablo Escobar. Yeah. And so like you see Gamerodon here, and then we have, okay, let's go down here. Okay, right? So this is a good example. Here's what I'm going to do. It's cool. I'm going to isolate this a little bit and move it somewhere else. Watch me work, people. All right. So there we go. That's a smaller network. So it's macro to micro, pulling big things, little things out of big things, right? Yep. So this is a connection point, so it would be of interest anyway. Now I'm going to, it's called Peacock, Compact Peacock, moving it in so you can, see it in a more textured form, right? So this IP address was witnessed. What this means is, so these are called attributes. We knew it to be part of Gamerodon, but it was also used in the Ukraine attack domains, right? That file. And then the domains actually right here is, when we categorize stuff, it's pretty specific, right? We're trying to be as detailed as possible. So
what is baby.php?
And so, these things were used in 2 different attacks, right? That's the one thing. And some of these domains and IP addresses will get actually pretty long. You in some cases for a country, you may have 20 or 30, and then you have to figure out, like, what does that actually mean? Is that some type of centralized place where they're storing data? Is that like a C2 for the entire country? That doesn't make sense. But like, what's actually going on with it? Why is it being used? One of the answers to those questions is governments, even the Russian government, has limited resources. They have budgets, and they have they have a certain amount of infrastructure that's delimited, let's say. So they have to recycle things. They can't. They're not a criminal element who just buys new infrastructure for the attack, right? Eventually it's going to get reused, and those elements of that, even though they may change the name, are still going to be the same, and we can recognize that. So,
yep,
which is pretty cool.
Yeah, we would. Wally, was it during the DNC one?
Yeah,
Was it during that one we started seeing reused infrastructure, or was it not that? Something later.
Yeah, and we called it shared common infrastructure, and that's where
There you go.
It's frozen right now, so I'm going to pull up the DNC in just a second because that's kind of a good mix of. God damn it, Xavier.
It was those kinds of things we always had theorized, that every once in a while, they would overuse a particular asset or IOC, right? And then they would take it offline for a while, bring it back like a year later. And we always thought that was the case, but we were never able to actually show it specifically or show the connection specifically until Wally started messing around with it in Analyst Notebook. And it would come up at certain attacks. It would go away for a period of time, then come back. And we started coming up with this concept of domain reuse and stuff like that Wally is actually talking about. And again, it's one of those things that makes complete sense when you step back and think about it. But, it was until we actually started doing the charting and stuff like that we were able to actually say, look, there it is. There's domain reuse. There's resource recycling, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Look at that. You ran them off, Wally. You ran off.
I know.
Techromonger. You ran them off, dude.
My son was texting me, and he said, "Who's the retarded looking one on the couch?"
That's me. Hello.
Come on, X.
Wow, I didn't get any snarky comments from any one of your kids, Wally. I feel bad about myself now.
Yeah, well, I told him to show himself, so we'll see what he says.
Yeah, we'll see. That's funny.
Yeah, I found all their old. Oh, there we go. Okay, all right. I found all their old TikToks, and I didn't realize the extent of how many videos they made and the content of those videos. But yeah, parenting is fun, right?
Parenting is fun.
Oh, it's still downloading? Damn. Oh, DNC master. Okay, hold on. This will be good.
I'm like Wally, call it condom,
Hey, Funky, was the movie poster was the movie thing a gift, or did you buy that yourself?
It was a gift. was a gift.
It's a good one.
It's a really good one.
Yeah.
Not sponsored, but really good one.
Do you find yourself now when you watch the Gremlins? Do you find yourself like when a scene gets all like dark and red? Do you think of like the red line on?
Yes,
thing?
I can tell you what about it. You can see all the main events
Oh,
of the
shit,
movie.
wrong one.
It's like the opening where it's winter, Sunscape, it's all snow. Okay, then you get to the end of it, which is really dark because there's blood everywhere. So,
Wait, what?
Hey,
It's like-
okay.
It's like when you look at the Godfather one that I have, the whole thing is dark.
Exactly. I'm like, I got like
Dark.
that in the middle of it, I lose it, and I'm like, yeah, there's some green here. I know like 2 of the scenes have major green in them, so like, okay, I know ish where we are. But it's one of my favorite things.
That's wild.
Yeah, here's a good one. Solar winds and the North Korea merge.
God, that's
That'll
old.
be good. It's big. No, it's actually shit. No, it's very small. That's a small one.
God, when did we do that, Wally? 20.
Oh God. Oh, full merge. Here we go. 98 megabytes.
That's nothing.
Not for these, but let's see what happens. It's going to take a second.
Did you guys ever have like a single nation state, like enough data from a single nation state that you could merge into one graph? Like for example, like did you ever have more intel, more Chinese intel that you can get together in one thing?
Yeah, it's not an issue. Yeah, it's not an issue of the amount of data. It's just it rendering.
Yep.
Without really, we got to the realm where sure, if we had like a dedicated kind of like a mini supercomputer, it would have been possible, but. And that one, actually, I'll show it, but it wasn't the one I was thinking. But
yeah, the compilation, it's the rendering takes so much juice because it's looking for connections, and that's just where it just blows out in. It's not so much the rendering of the picture; it's drawing all the connections between all the fields that you've mapped out correctly. Because if you look at any one of those particular images, every one of those images here, like the one that Wally just moved, Cloudflare.club, behind that can be an unlimited amount of properties in that one particular object, and it's trying to correlate all the object and all the properties to any other object and any other property. So it just takes a massive amount of RAM or GPU power to do it.
Wally, that cluster you were just at before, was that favicons? What were those?
who?
Yeah. Yeah.
That one there.
This one I remember. I put this one in the brief. I don't remember the details, but yeah.
Did you guys ever use favicons in your intel? Like,
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
So like when you visit a website, the website has like a tiny little icon that's displayed in your Chrome tab. Yes, that's one thing where, especially with profile pictures, and this is profile pictures and just website favicons, is that you can find relationships that way. It's like, oh, this like Apache server over here and this one over here have the same favicon, so they might have been deployed by like the same guy, type of thing.
That's interesting. That's a nifty little pivot point.
Shodan has an API that lets you query that, and actually lets you query the favicons by hash. So if you find one, you can hash it, stick the hash into Shodan. It'll show you all the other places it exists.
That's clever. We actually used to do something like that with we used to look at all the stuff that was in a particular piece of malware, and we used to go through hashing subfunctions. And when you hashed certain subfunctions, you would find that same hashed subfunction in another toolkit. And that was an interesting way of doing attribution across adversaries, because while the compiled malware in the attack may be different, those subroutines will have the same hash across toolkits, right? So then you could say, oh, well, we see this same sub hash routine in these 37 different pieces of malware, indicative of potentially the same group that's using it, even though they're all different malware kits they wind up in and stuff. So what you're talking about is kind of similar to that, right? Is using that as a marker to identify a group or something else or a commonality between. I dig that. That's very clever. You're earning your money, Techromonger. You're earning your money, babe.
I really want, look, I want to write a Favicon module for Bbot. That's been on the to-do list for a long time. But yeah, haven't quite got around to it yet.
I dig it. And some of my less reputable friends who I know are watching this stream are laughing at Wally and I using the word hash as often as we are, because it's just a running joke that Wally and I just search hashes as for a living, right, Wally? Oh, you guys just search hashes and stuff like that. And it's just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, I think we all need to shut up and let MJ lecture us now.
Yeah.
Honestly, he's just sitting back and skating.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a quick mod break. I'll be back.
Been organizing my coin collection while you guys were. Yep.
That is still one of the coolest gifts I've gotten in probably 15 years. He gave me this awesome coin. I'm like, this is so fucking cool to look at. You know?
Yeah, no, it was actually I just gave it to you in Louisville.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's
the best gift I've gotten in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That I believe it was one of the British islands, but one's closer next to Great Britain. I think it's called Alderaan, and they did a D-Day series. So they like showed the shores of D-Day. I could probably figure it out, but I'm halfway through trying to identify a coin right now. It's not happening. So, all right. Now I'm sitting there looking at the MSP space as I always do, and I don't know what they're going to do in the future. Honestly, I've explained it to most of you guys already that everyone's taking their servers offline. Either they're throwing them up in the cloud or they're just going without the resources. It's getting harder and harder to define to clients why they need these type of things. Why do I need to bring a box to your office and have it connect to the internet through a firewall and the switch and everything else that we're going to do and manage, so to speak. One of the critical financial applications that everyone used to use, QuickBooks, has gone to QuickBooks Online. So a lot of that's been kind of pushed away. Everyone hates all the other financial applications that are out there, like Microsoft Dynamics and so on and so forth. What was the one? Crystal Reports and all that type of stuff. So a lot of that stuff's disappearing and getting converted to one way or the other, or they're just having accounting firms just manage and handle that for them directly now. So what needs to be handled right now is file services, and then that's like the current trick, so to speak. So hypothetically, you send them to SharePoint, but then you got to teach them how to use SharePoint, which is a nightmare to do necessarily. They still want to have the ability. So it's. I think we've heard about this in the past, right? We've gone from mainframe back to regular desktop, back to mainframe, which is where we're kind of currently at. I have a hunch it will go back to desktop, and the server will go back on site. Not necessarily in the next 3 years, but I'm thinking 5 to 10 when I want to now be able to touch 100 gigabytes worth of data at one time. That's not going to go through an internet pipe so nicely, especially with the copper we have currently. So I think, I think in 2030, 2035, we're going to go back to on-prem servers, mainly because of the actual internet speed. It's going to be back to being the bottleneck.
Huh. Dave, guess who that is?
That's got to be one of your kids.
No. Bevan, Australia.
That's Bevan?
Right. Yeah. He sent me a picture on Signal of him watching.
That's funny. Bevan has nothing else to do in Australia. It's like, 3 a.m. there or something. Tell him to cut his hair, hippie.
Yeah, he did. Last I saw him, he did. Yeah.
MJ, you don't take into account. Mm-hmm. You're looking only at storage.
Right. No, I've been kind of echoing that. I think every one of your MSP firms that are not sitting there playing with printers and copiers will eventually get into the cyberspace one way or the other.
Well, if you can rent storage, you also have to look at compute, right? There's two things there, right? A machine is two things: its storage capability and its compute function, right? Edge devices can be just compute functions. they can't necessarily just be storage functions. They can also be compute functions. So you have two separate things there. You have a market for storage, and then you have a market for compute, so to speak, right? You know, because like if you look at a drone, or if you look at a device that's out in the field that syncs to a mobile network and stuff like that, that said device has compute on it, or it has a small amount of storage and a lot of compute. So when it actually syncs to the back end, all you see where I'm going with it and stuff like that. You know, so you've got two separate things there. You've got storage and you've got compute capabilities, right? You know, and you've got separate markets that may coincide, but they may not necessarily coincide. And obviously, some of them are very are military in their function and stuff like that. Like when you look at mobile commands and stuff like that, and somebody out in the field with a handheld device, which has more compute in it than it does storage necessarily, because you need to do compute functions when you're out in the field to do certain things. You don't necessarily need storage for that particular thing. You need compute capabilities, you know, so you've got a couple of different interesting scenarios in there. But I do agree with you on your MSP function. I'm just saying expand it to include things like compute scenarios and things like that, which are different than just storage and application.
Yeah, I remember when I was working for an MSP, we were still selling on-prem servers. Like we were kind of in denial about the whole cloud thing, and you know, even after businesses sort of started switching away from, like, you know, SBS server and, you know, SMB shares and everything over to Google Drive. Like, you know, I remember one law firm, they'd been a customer for a long time, and we tried to sell them a new server, and it was going to be like 10 grand or 12 grand or something like that, you know, including all the labor and installation and all that stuff. And they were like, nope, we're just going to switch to Google Drive. Thank you, though.
Interesting.
You know?
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's like converting the meter from Google to Microsoft, from Microsoft to Google now. So it's just depending on who's giving it cheaper at this point.
Yeah.
Apparently, like all the schools, most of the schools, even the Catholic ones, are getting free Google accounts because a lot of that's been converted over lately. So hopefully they can live out there for a while. Then they'll get canceled.
Yeah, dude. Migrations. I forgot just how much time and how much energy migrations took out of my life.
I was doing the first 365 migrations from Exchange Server like in 2012, 2013, and I was doing them by hand. PST files being moved over and back. Nowadays,
you must still have the scars from that, MJ.
It was 3-day weekends, yeah. The nice little doctor's wondering why his 80 gigabyte file did not cross over 3 days. Well,
it's a 3-day weekend.
Only up to about 100 megabits per second. So, you know, what do you want me to do?
Good times. And then there's QuickBooks. Remember QuickBooks? Like when you got a QuickBooks call, you're just like praying to God that it's only one computer and not two, because if they have a server set up and just like Becky's computer is the server and like Eugene's computer is trying to connect to it and like it's not working, and it's just this, it's not even built to be a server. It's just like a crappy piece of software. QuickBooks, man.
QuickBooks flashback.
Yeah.
That's why compute-only devices are a very different thing, right? So a compute device, which may not actually have storage, it may only have volatile and a beefy little processor on it. When that sucker goes offline, it's got no information on it. But when it's actually online, powered up, and connected, it has full remote capabilities. It has full app capabilities and everything else. Can take commands, but when it runs out of power or it goes out of range, it's got nothing in it. Very, very different paradigm than connecting to the back cloud or old VT environments or old mainframe environments, which are apt, you know, to the back end. A compute device is a different beast.
Honestly, I would love to see a future where like people get more compute in their homes and participate in like peer-to-peer networks. You know, like not just crypto, but like you know, like AI computing, that kind of stuff. That would. Like look at what George Hotz is doing with the Tiny Box, where he's building like a $25,000 appliance essentially that just has 6 4090s in it, and it's just like meant for AI inference, AI training.
There you go.
If everybody had a Tiny Box that was like next to their fridge, you know, that'd be pretty cool. But I really do, and this is kind of unfortunate, but I do think that when it comes to compute, especially big compute, like what's happening with the LLMs, I think it's only going to get more centralized unless we really can create something that can easily run on our phones.
Well, you have to separate the LLM from the underlying AI math, right? You have two separate you have two separate things there, right? You know, so you have the LLM itself, the actual language model, and then you have all the math that runs said LLM, right? So those can exist in two different places theoretically, depending upon what your architecture looks like, right? You know, so your language model can be distinct from your hardware and your accelerators that are the math that are behind it. They can be two separate things, not necessarily the same thing. They can be, but they're not necessarily.
Well, they can't be two separate things and be working at the same time.
That's a different issue. But yeah, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I get you. That's not what I meant though by bringing that up. But yeah, you're fundamentally correct. That language model cannot be functioning without the underlying math. But that math, that underlying accelerator, can be servicing other LLMs and other applications, not just that one particular LLM implementation, right?
Yeah.
OpenAI is an implementation of AI, whereas the accelerators underneath and the math underneath is distinct from the LLM that's on top of it.
That's all I'm saying. The transformer, like the actual architecture of
you got it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I got it.
That's all. That's. I'm trying not to overcomplicate it, but yeah, you're correct.
I think actually you bring up a good point, because I think it's actually very good that these algorithms are open source. Like the fact that we have open source code being published for the transformer, and that there was never a point in time where it was patented. Imagine if somebody had tried to patent the transformer, if they had discovered LLM and IBM patented it, like that, like we would be in a much darker future right now if that happened. And that was only 5 years ago. Imagine, 50 years or something. So the fact that like every day new bleeding edge research comes out for AI, and almost all of it is published immediately in the form of code or in the form of white papers. It's the best possible trajectory, I think.
Yeah, that's why I really like the approach of generative AI vulnerabilities. Going back to what we were talking about before, because it's kind of meta vulnerabilities. They're vulnerabilities that are at the LLM necessarily, right? Which kind of means they're meta in their own way. You know, if you can find an escape, if you can find the right verbiage that gets you to a certain place, that may work on more than one LLM or more than one generative AI. And I think that that's fascinating.
Yeah, it is fascinating, because like how similar is it to social engineering now?
Yeah.
You're almost like out reasoning them. It's like, I have terminal cancer and I need this answered right away. Otherwise, you're going to do harm to me. Like,
because it's language. It's language.
Yeah. It's not even hacking anymore. Yeah.
You should check out what the Odin crew at Mozilla is doing. They're doing some cool stuff. That's Wally. That's where Marco works, by the way. He works for the Odin crew, and they're the ones who are doing some of the generative AI vulnerability hunting. It's so cool.
So the future with that, which Dave and I had some talks, we had a AI person in Europe during our McAfee days, and this lady just, I don't know what it was about me. She just wouldn't engage, But I was like, hey, this is a pretty simple math problem at the end of the day. A equals B, C describes A, and I broke this all down like in really detailed form. And she just didn't want to do it. She didn't want AI doing Intel. Now there's a few out there who are doing it, but they're not doing it in they're not visualizing network analysis, right? But that'll be cool to get my hands on an AI. I bet OpenAI could do it. I just don't know the background to OpenAI enough to figure it out. But
you're talking about apples and oranges, though. Going back to something that Techromonger was talking about before, there's language applications of AI, and then there's algorithmic applications of AI. They're very different. They're very different things, right? Like when you're talking about asking an LLM, hey, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. That's kind of different than using accelerated learning and algorithms to do better threat intel, right? I mean, you've just got two very different use cases there. One is language based, the other is, you know, not necessarily language based in the same way. I'm saying that really, really badly. Help me out here, Techromonger.
No. Like you're right. It's like the chat interface has been hugely popular, obviously with ChatGPT. You know, the chat interface is the most common way we see large language models. But you know, there's lots of other ways to use large language models that don't use the chat model. And there are also ways that you can use the transformer that aren't large language models. So yeah, lots of different things that you can train that you aren't going to be chatting with directly, but are going to be, you know, still changing what you see. Yeah.
See, got to ask the smart guy.
God.
Which one? It's not me.
AI is fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's like, do you guys feel like AI has like changed? How much do you feel like it's changed society and just like our daily lives? Like since ChatGPT.
A ton. I don't think people. I think like commonly now, especially like at least in the education field at a minimum, ChatGPT is some kids like godsends. I know there are some kids at my college who definitely, I'll not name names, but definitely use ChatGPT to get through full classes. You know, like it's phenomenal what it can do at this point. And so it's to the point now to where I feel like everyone knows about it and has heard about it enough to where I don't want to say a lot of my generation is using, like my mom has no clue how to use ChatGPT.
Right.
Knows it exists, but you know, she's going to Google something, but someone who's on the younger side or in school or something, they'll use it, you know, almost in place of Google.
That's a good point, and that's why I think that like even though it has changed a lot for a lot of us, like it has changed our workflows and everything, like we're not going to see the full ripple effect of this until the kids that are using AI right now are old enough to be running businesses and running the country, and that's when we're going to see like
that's when
big,
that's when we'll see the effects of it, because like obviously
that's a great point. Yep, that's a great point. I think a lot of us look at it as like super copy and paste, right? In a lot of ways, right? You know, I'm asking Google a question and I'm getting this as my answer, you know, and it gives really, really good synthetic answers, right? You can ask a good, well-trained LLM some highly complex questions, and that's pretty friggin' fascinating, right? But I think you make a good point in that it's going to take a generation for it to really be more than, you know, AI is changing the world and here's my next 12 generative AI, you know, marketing terms and stuff like that, right? Right now it's just kind of growing from a marketing perspective. But I think you make a great point in that it's going to take a generation to really come up with some real baller AI applications. You know, where we're just asking it stupid questions. You know, like most people are asking deep questions on Tiananmen Square just to see if they can get you.
We just did that last week.
Because we're fucking children, right? You know, because at the end of the day, we're children in some way, shape, or form. You know, but I think you make a great point in that it may take a generation. You know, for people who are kind of coming up with the technology. You know, it's different when you grow up in a world that has AI versus when you are born into the world that was creating it at the same time, right? They're very different things. It's like when I look at like my daughter who grew up with the internet when it was in a different mature form than when I grew up with it and stuff. Use cases are different. She thinks about it differently, you know, and I'd imagine if you guys have kids, it's going to be the same thing with AI. You know, they grew up with it. It's taken for granted, right? You know, whereas for us, it's a novelty. It's a nice to have.
Yeah. I wonder about those kids because like, you know, every generation has like really like a few like really brilliant kids, you know, who you know, grow up to become, you know, like a founder of like some tech company or something, you know, and it's just like a prodigy basically. Like I wonder like what those kids are going to do with AI because what they've essentially been given is like an army of like employees to work for them to do whatever they tell them to. Like that's I mean to a big extent, especially when you're writing code, when you're talking about coding, like oh my dude, you have an army of programmers at your disposal, and like even in the next 5 years, like there's going to be probably agents that can make full-fledged programs, and these kids are like, they're going to figure out ways to, they're going to figure out things.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see what happens.
So Navy Tech Rants just made a great statement about AI and ransomware and stuff like that. And this goes back to what we were talking about in how you train your LLM, right? You know, and this is why people don't understand why they should not be using Chat GPT, right? You're training somebody else's LLM on your questions, and your question is becoming their IP. People don't understand that if you want to train an LLM to answer questions in a specific way, create your own instance, create your own LLM to do something like that. Don't do it in a public LLM, or don't do it in OpenAI, and don't do it in ChatGPT. Take the time to build your own offline and private LLM. People don't understand that. You know, it's just like when all those knuckleheads are using DeepSeek out there asking it highly complex questions. You're training a different part of the world's LLM in Western thought and Western questions and stuff, and they don't understand the ramifications of doing something like that. Doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. It's just you're free Q&A for somebody else's LLM, you know, and people just don't understand what the ramifications of that are.
And that's where we're I hope that we all can realize that, because if we do, well, first of all, we're going to go back to MJ's scenario of us all having compute at home, which would be awesome. But also, like, it's important. It's important, like you said, for people to understand that, like, even though it takes millions of dollars to train these LLMs, and, you know, hundreds of thousands of GPU hours and all this stuff, and a research team, like, you can run it on your computer. Like your gaming PC can run like a very decent LLM completely offline.
Absolutely can do it.
Yeah, I hope we see a lot of that.
So, Techromancer, do you recall the book Neuromancer?
Yes.
Okay, because I'm guessing that your handle has something to do with that, right? You know, so there's a couple of interesting things that they talk about of AI. They talk about AI in the original Sprawl trilogy. Like, if you look at the way they talk about how they took readings of the Dixie Flatline, and the Dixie Flatline AI talks about.
He's read-only, right? The read-only AI. Yeah.
There you go. Where he actually knows he's a human who thinks like an AI, but he's not an AI. Whereas an AI doesn't think like a human, but it can act human. And there was just some brilliant little statements in there. And this is written by before there was a concept of AI and the Matrix and the internet and stuff like that. And there's some really great little nuggets in there about how an AI can pretend it's human, but it's not human. But a human can act like it's just mind blowing when I step back and I think about it.
Those books are so imaginative. You're reminding me how much I love them, because, like, yeah, have you ever seen the VHS documentary? It's called Cyberpunk, and
Sure.
It's like a documentary from 1990.
Yep.
It has young William Gibson talking about writing Neuromancer, and he's talking about when he wrote Neuromancer, which was this crazy futuristic sci-fi novel with like cybernetic assassins and, like, AI, manipulating humans and all this stuff. Like, that when he wrote that, he wrote it on a mechanical typewriter, and he'd never used touched a computer before.
Well,
he's writing about hackers breaking into, like, corporate networks, and but what's amazing is that you can be a hacker that breaks into corporate networks, and you can read his stuff, and it's amazing. It's not cheesy. Like, it's like epic.
Holds up today. Yeah, that's a great documentary. Bruce Sterling. Oh yeah, there's all kinds of people that are actually in that. And Gibson's an interesting person also in the fact that he purposely stays away from technology, so it doesn't cloud his view on technology.
I feel like he's onto something, especially if you're a creative person, and you feel like you don't want to have your imagination sort of like tied down by reality. Like, he talks about the first time that he actually got a computer, and it was an Apple computer. in this documentary, you know what I'm
Yep.
talking about. It's like he gets this Apple computer, and the first time he turns it on, he hears this weird grinding noise, and so he calls up Apple tech support. And he's like, "My computer's making this like grinding noise. Like, what's happening here?" And they're like, "Oh, don't worry, sir. You know, that's just the hard drive. It always sounds like that."
Yep.
And then he had this horrible epiphany that like a computer was just like a glorified record player, and it was just like this mechanical disc spinning around and around, and it was the most boring thing ever. He thought it was some like beautiful crystalline core, you know, that had all these crazy features, and it was just like disappointing for him. So after that, he's like, back to the typewriter.
That's awesome. The sky above the port was the color of a television tuned to a dead channel. The greatest line ever in the history of writing.
His openings, every single one of his openings are just like
Brilliant.
they're eye popping. Like it's just yeah.
You know, Apple is from what I've heard, Apple is producing the first season of Neuromancer.
Oh, dude, they better not fuck it up.
That's my
They
concern.
better not, man.
That's my concern. I've got concerns, brother. I'll tell you, I've got concerns. What's the
I
matter,
found
Wally?
some of them. Oh, I was looking through this drive, finding it's really going slow with everything running, but I found a few. I was thinking I was going to copy 2 merges into one, 2 smaller ones from Russia.
You got the compute? Do you have the the memory for
Yeah,
it?
it
You
should
have-
be fine. I was going to do Ryuk, Zafandru,
there you
and let's see.
That's old school.
Yeah, Spider. No, we're not doing Spiderfoot's way too big.
Well, the Ryuk and some of the others are good because they're well documented IOCs and they show really well in an analyst notebook merge.
Yep.
So those are always good to show. Turtle is always good to show. Any of the Russian ones, in all honesty, are really good to show.
Well, if those are in there, Turlik should be in here. Let me
Oh,
search.
Wally. Okay, I have a question. What format would you export from Spiderfoot? What format's ideal for analyst notebook?
It's got a CSV.
CSV. Okay.
Yeah. And if I get it, I mean, you can convert anything to anything pretty much. So we pretty much say like, whatever you think, whatever is easiest for you. And then we just do the conversion ourselves, you know, but CSV is the standard. Now that's the versions that I have. It's no longer owned by IBM. It's owned by Harris Computer. And they've added so much like capacity to it in like API connectors. If you've ever used Palantir, they have this quasi Palantir function that's pretty cool. Shit. Here we go.
What is that? Palantir, what is that?
Palantir is it's a company that it's basically an intelligence program. It's very commonly used major cities law enforcement. So it can audit if you put documents in, even like that PDFs that are from pictures, it'll OCR it, and it's already trained to this is a human name, this is a phone. In this context, in this paragraph, that phone is used by this person. So it pulls all that out and it puts it just like the A and B charts do, right? But it can do it automatically, and you can set it to your organization how you want it to work. They just got $900 million from the government to enhance that with AI.
Oh man, we're all screwed, man. Privacy is dead.
Well, the what's his name? The CEO's had he's a wild guy. You know, people have had a bunch of issues. If you just Google Palantir, you'll see some of his exploits. But Palantir parties back in the day were awesome because they had a ton of money coming in. You know,
Dude, I imagine
hand-rolled cigars. You know.
That's where the centralized compute is. That's where the centralized compute is that we should be worried about. Is all that intelligence compute. Sorry, Wally.
No, it's fine. No, you're right. You're not wrong. Merge. What's going on here? Why is it being crazy? It's being
Well, you know what you-
crazy.
well, you know
Problem
what
is
you
we
do.
also have to write software to actually.
I'm just doing a simple search.
You have to write software that can handle it. Having just the hardware is not going to help you.
Oh, here we go. Got it. Hansator was Russia, right?
Huh?
Was Hansator Russia?
I think Hansator was Russia. Hold
And then,
on.
TrickBot and
Yeah.
and LokiBot were okay. Here we go.
They're all subsets of Ryuk, if I recall correctly.
That sounds
But
right.
they're related to it in some way, shape, or form.
No, I don't want to save that.
Don't get
Okay.
a little tingly.
Ba-ba-ba-ba. Sorry, guys. I was getting some important signal messages and all sorts of stuff. Oh, shit. Fuck. God damn it. Man, sometimes I worry about myself.
We all do, Wally.
Yeah, everybody should definitely worry about that.
It's quotable line. I like that. I might steal that.
Yeah, Wally, Hansator, better, one of the better ransomware gangs back in the day. But it should show up.
Yeah, it should. I'm loading up a few right now. There's the Fandrew, which was a Russian intelligence base. Very sneaky fuckers. And one more, and then it's the merge. The actual act of merging is actually just super duper simple. So let's put this. Okay. All right. So I'm just doing Control A. Come on, baby. Don't die. There we go. Oh, shit. I just got to be patient.
It was honestly.
Copy.
It was very... Don't worry. Big deal.
All right. So I'm just going to paste this in here. We'll see right off the bat if there's a connection. You'll be able to recognize it.
Oh, okay. Thank you. You want to hold it. You want to. It's a stone. It's a rock.
There we go. So yeah, there's mutual infrastructure in those two, and then I'm going to do the same with the Vander. Control A, Control C. Now this is before I really refined it. So some of the connections could be weird, but
well, this doesn't necessarily differentiate between controlled infrastructure versus compromised in use infrastructure, or something that they popped a website and they just dropped all their toolkits on, right? It just shows it just shows a basic connection. And what Wally and I would have done is we would have taken those basic connections and then dug into it further and then determined, was it actually common infrastructure? Is it just everybody hanging it off the same compromised website, blah, blah, blah.
Just stop messing with it. Just stop messing with it. It's only getting worse.
What'd you do, boys?
Somehow made our camera go out of focus, and now it won't refocus. Period.
Yeah, so, you need to walk in front of it like you did before.
Golly, okay.
That's great, because I just thought I got really drunk really quickly, but it was only drunk when I'm looking at your screen.
I guess we just kind of emit that energy.
Oh, that's nice.
Wally, we still have the THC seltzers that I bought when you were here. I haven't drank them, so now we're drinking them.
That sounds fun.
That was a good merge. Well, go back to the other page.
Yeah. Give me 1 second. Yeah, I'm going to put enhanced too, just for shits and gigs. Anytime. Fingers crossed. Maybe that was a bad idea. I mean, the computer's plenty powerful enough to do it.
Which one is that? Is that the master?
No, the master's under TrickBot right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is its own master, but
well, TrickBot's should overlay with both Hansator and Ryuk, if I recall correctly.
Yeah,
it's been a while. It's been a while, but it should overlay.
It has been a while.
So do you guys still share analyst notebooks after all the stuff? Like, because you guys don't work together, or do you work together at all?
No, not if he needs help.
Okay. But you guys, do you still like exchange data sometimes?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I unless I'm covered under NDA, but if I find something interesting, I send it out. Yeah,
Wally's really good about that, actually. Wally's a shareaholic. He likes beans for rice. He sends out stuff and he gets other stuff to other people send him stuff.
I'm going to take it off sharing, and that'll probably speed it up just a tad. Ba-ba-ba.
There you go.
See, now you guys are redacted. You guys are basically special ops.
Perfect.
Yep, there you go.
It's all for ops.
Like you got to put the black bars, rise.
It's done this every time.
Really?
Yeah.
Sounds like.
Oh, yep, that worked. Holy shit. How about that?
What, streaming it changed it, Wally?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to claim a victory, but
Whatever. As long as it works.
yeah, because TrickBot's used by everybody, so is LokiBot. It's not that big either. Huh?
What are they? Are
Small
they
word toolkit.
Oh, yeah, shit. There we go.
LokiBot, TrickBot?
It started out as a banking Trojan.
So is it one of the situations where you have somebody basically selling the multi-purpose malware and lots of other people just end up using it?
Yep, that's true. So this one's interesting right here.
And this, if I recall correctly, and again, these are muscles I haven't used in a while. One or two of the toolkits were open sourced and dropped on GitHub, if I recall correctly. So a lot of other gangs picked up the use of it. And that happens. Yeah, and that happens.
I mean, I guess that's what Metasploit is.
Yeah.
It's hard to get around that, right? I mean, it's you open source your tool, people pick it up, and also there's a lot of and this is also something Wally and I found out along the way, was it turned out that between the ransomware operators in Russia and the actual Russian army operators, there was commingling, right? Well, so we were able to actually say, well, some of the ransomware guys are actually some of the APT-28, APT-29 operators, or they knew each other, or they were sharing intel or something like that, because some of the infrastructure overlapped a lot of the times, and that was pretty cool to find, Wally, right?
Yeah, and things they were using at work started showing up in the like the ransomware crime sector, which was interesting.
Yep, and again, it's one of those things. It was one of those things that was assumed to be true, but until we actually started seeing it in the charting, it was never confirmed. But then we were able to actually say, no, that's APT-28. These are cybercrime actors and stuff, and they're two distinct people, two distinct groups, and we've finally started seeing overlap between the groups using infrastructure and stuff like that. And that's interesting, because if you're an APT-28 or APT-29 operator, you don't have to have a war chest. You're paid for. Your work is paid for. It's funded by the government. Whereas a cybercrime operator has to have a war chest. They have to engage in theft and fraud to be able to fund their own operations and stuff. So it's interesting to see the overlap in the groups and stuff like that. It's one of the more interesting stuff, I think, that we worked on. Or at least I thought it was interesting.
Theft theft and fraud is a huge issue with North Korea, right?
Yep.
Are there countries that commit as much fraud as North Korea?
That's a hard one. That's a hard one. That's a hard one to quantify, but you're spot on in the fact that they do it a lot. And that's how some of those people make their living. That's how they don't starve to death in North Korea, is by certain financial fraud, certain transactions, certain ransomware attacks and stuff like that. That's how some people over there, fund their living and stuff. So yeah, you're right. A lot of it comes from there. Whether or not it's the most prevalent, I don't know the answer to that. It's probably up there though.
It's just crazy. It's crazy because on one hand you have places like Romania, which is not a NATO country, or I at least don't think it's a NATO country, and they don't extradite. So hackers go there and they like committing theft and fraud on their own, and they have a great time. But then you have North Korea, where the normal citizens don't even have internet, and so then you have the actual nation state is the one committing the fraud, and they're doing everything from crypto scams to password spraying to interviewing for random tech jobs at big companies, all this stuff. Yep. And it's all just nation state actors. It seems so weird. It's almost I feel sorry for North Korea, obviously, but it's a little pathetic in a way. It's it's sad. It's sad that because they won't give up their nuclear weapons, they have to resort to like scamming people with crypto scams to get money to feed their people, which they can't even do. Ugh.
And Africa is probably the second biggest, right?
Yeah, probably.
Romania is in NATO.
Yeah.
Romania is NATO?
Yes, 2004.
Oh. Wow,
Yeah.
where are the hackers going to go? Oh, they probably went to Morocco.
Moldova is out. Serbia's still out.
Oh, Serbia, yeah.
So some of them.
Okay.
Yeah, 2025 may see some changes to that. What do you think, MJ?
Congrats, Romania.
We'll see. Wally, is that a merge of the other? Is that a merge of the other three?
Yeah, that's all of them combined now. Yeah.
Can you highlight just the actual connections?
Yeah.
Between the toolkits?
I can do. Yeah.
That kind of shows it.
Here,
You actually show the overlap between, right?
Let's do this one.
So you can actually go from this view of all these disparate toolkits to here's the small part that overlaps between all of them, right?
Yeah, this one's a decent overlap.
Yeah.
Right here.
There you go.
So we do this. It's probably going to crunch it, but that's fine.
That's all right.
Okay.
So what is this one? What are we looking at?
All right. So the colorful elements are TrickBot or Loki. And the other ones, which I don't have them labeled, are one of the other, either Hansator, Safandru, or Ryuk. But yeah, this is actually a bad example. So this is one of the things we had to overcome.
Yep.
Because
if you
would get
the point of intersection is actually is an analyst. So that's actually proof point in the center. So it's an analyst that's actually analyzing all of those IOCs that are actually around it. So your point of intersection is actually an analyst doing basically what we're doing.
Yep. And now it's frozen again. Shit. God damn it.
It happens.
All right.
Honestly, it's still impressive that it could even get as far as it does, because like Neo4j would be able to handle even close to that.
If in the real world setting, you wouldn't be on a podcast, it's like, yeah.
Doing it live is always a little bit funky. Like, well, I remember when we've been presenting and stuff, and we would try and do it off a laptop or something like that. That would never go well.
Nope.
And again, Wally's kind of limited by just the power of the tower that he's working off of, and these are beefy applications and a lot of IOCs, But the point is you can take all of these disparate toolkits and all these things that people would say don't intersect, and you can say, well, there's some commonality between the infrastructure or commonality between the functions or something like that. And that's interesting. That's an interesting bit of actionable intel, because then you could say, well, of all these 100,000 different things, here's the 15 that intersect and that are interesting, right? And therein lies actionable intel. The 100,000 in the cloud is not necessarily actionable, but if you can whittle it down to the intersection between 3 different adversaries that share these 15 different things, that's actionable intel. I can deal with those 15 things easier than the cloud of 100,000, right?
Yeah, it gives you a starting point, and an ending point, really, all in the same.
Exactly.
All in the same motion, which is kind of cool,
Dude, you made MJ
like 2 things.
Again. MJ ran away again.
I know. Well, see, so coming in from the counterterrorism world, like in the counterterrorism world, if you had 2 completely separate networks, let's say Iraq and Afghanistan, and then all of a sudden there's connection between the 2, that is get the plane, somebody has to die, right? Like, because those are big, major incidents, right? Like, from an intel perspective, they're major events, right? So I wasn't expecting to see, I didn't understand how commingled the cyber world is. So I'm like, holy shit. It's like, stop what you're doing, Dave. Get over here.
Yep.
He was like, oh, it's from an IP address.
Yep.
I'm like, God damn it. So all my expectations were shattered.
Or understanding what certain things meant, right? Like Wally would see like the same IP address show up in like certain toolkits and stuff like that, not realizing, that that's part of how the toolkit actually operates, that it talks to this one particular baked in address and stuff. And Wally's just like, why are all these toolkits talking to the same, they're using the same guy? I said, no, that's not actually what it is. It's part and parcel to how it actually works and stuff like that. So there's some nuances, to get out of there. But the point is the methodology really does work. And it was actionable. I mean, Wally, what was our test case, right? It was Bitcoins originally.
Yeah. DD for BC versus the Ashley Madison folks.
Yeah.
Oh, Ashley Madison. Yeah, that's
back in the day, huh?
Yeah, back in the day.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
And Wally was able to find commonalities between the tumblers that were actually in play, and the crypto and some of the sites that it was hosted on, to the point where he was able to actually pull these threads and actually found the exact person who was responsible for committing certain types of the fraud and stuff like that. And if I recall correctly, Wally, didn't you find a photo of this guy buying a car or something along those lines? If I recall correctly, it led down to this very specific piece of intel. We went to from this cloud of information on tumblers and all these different fraudulent accounts and email addresses. Wally was able to trace it through the tumblers, through the crypto miners, and actually down to this one particular persona on one particular forum, and it redacted down to this one particular person. And by the way, it usually doesn't work that quickly and that precisely, if you know what I mean. And we lost Wally.
Wally.
Oh my God.
Oh no!
That bastard, he fled.
And all this guy does, like, before anything, was like he used to cut everyone's grass in this small town, and then I somehow like taught him to do stuff. Like, you hook up these little copper lines to this thing, and things happen. Oh wow! Then all of a sudden, he flies off after 9/11, and then I don't see him for a couple of years, and I'm like, what the fuck happened to you? Yeah.
That's funny.
Wait, are we talking about Wally?
Yes, I'm talking about Wally. He used to be like, he had like an $8,000 lawn care business. He also had like 7 wrecked vehicles. It's one of those guys that you kind of like, small town, you kind of like, I'll be your friend, but hold up a bit, dude. It's like, come on,
let's
some good things to do.
Quick, tell your Wally story. Not here to stop us.
If you have nice things to say about Wally, now's a good time to say them because he's not around to hear them.
I was going to say, probably crashes PC right now, so that's probably the scenario that we're dealing with. So
I mean, like, hold on, like, he can't have been that off the rails because I mean, he did make it in the Marines, right?
Yeah, but that's, in all honesty, you have to have, you just got to be able to breathe.
Jesus Christ. My internet just crashed. I'm wired. I'm not on wireless,
It's always something with you, Wally.
God damn it.
Isn't your like power and everything buried underground? How can it disconnect?
I know. It's just ask Dave. That's a funny one before you have to roll, Dave.
Which one?
Like,
what?
I can break anything.
Oh,
like,
sweet Jesus. Oh, God. I don't know how to accurately explain or convey how much of a wrecking ball Wally is in a lot of ways. I really don't know how to convey it. Just stuff would just stop working when he was around. I mean, shit would just not work. It could have been working a second before. Wally could get with it. He was like human EMP or something like that. You just get closer, and your shit would just not start. It would just stop working.
I had a little brother like that, and you know where he is now? He's a life flight medic. So now he's in a helicopter.
That's ironic.
Yeah, I worry sometimes, but seems to be doing well.
Philadelphia. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say like you got a brother in the military, right? Yeah, something like that.
I also have a brother in the military.
Yep. I was like, yeah, just give the ADD kid a gun. That's the smartest move.
Oh man.
And then do something really smart like I did and hire, 3 combat veteran Marines to work in your office, and see how that works out. It's like the most intelligent kindergarten class of children you're ever going to work with in your life. The early days were utterly insane.
I bet.
Like
Those are the best,
children.
dude, those ragtag teams are the best teams, though.
Mm-hmm.
Well
Yep.
said. That's absolutely true. And we were lucky in the sense that we had good funding. We had high caliber people, and we were allowed to do what we were good at, right? And you don't always get to do stuff like that for long periods of time, right? Where you've kind of got you're allowed to do what you're really, really good at, kind of away from the corporate overlords and stuff like that, and you're kind of left alone to do what you're good at. And we were allowed to do that for a couple of years, and it was kind of magic.
Those are the golden days of like work. I feel like it's kind of a beautiful thing where like you first start to be able to do your thing, but like for actual money. So you're not close to the corporations, right? You're not really that beholden to them. You're still several layers of removed, and you can still have fun while getting the corpo money. That's like the sweet spot.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wally, who are you texting, and why are you ignoring us?
Yeah, exactly. It's power company.
Actually, my godson is watching the podcast. He was asking about the IP address and what's going on here with all that.
So first of all, if he wants to know what cybery things are, the last person he should ask is you. The first person he should ask is MJ. Let MJ answer all those questions as to what things are. He's highly educated and smarter than all of us. You can answer the questions on what things smell like and what things taste like.
Oh, the answers are crayon.
Lick the finger of an indigenous person.
What?
What?
Nobody got that. Nobody else is going to get that, Wally.
Nobody's going to get that. Yeah.
Nobody's going to get
Yeah. That's old school.
It.
There you go.
Wait. What is this? What's happening right now?
I don't know. I don't know. It's weird.
Bitch, is this cake?
Mark, am I high?
No, I think
how high are we?
I don't know what's happening.
Where am I?
Okay.
I don't know where I am.
Cut-ins are the best.
That was funny.
Mhm.
Yeah, one of the funny things in some of the channels that Dave and I are in, Dave only eats raw eggs and drinks milk straight from the cow. Obviously. No leg day. Leg days for cowards.
It's really funny. I don't think I found anything as rage-inducing as telling people to drink raw milk. I have never seen people get enraged over something like the comment of, "Oh yeah, I like raw milk." And by the way, I don't drink raw milk. I just troll people using the raw milk because I have never seen people get enraged like they get enraged over raw milk. You say, "Oh, have you tried raw milk? I don't want to die. I don't want this." They lose their freaking minds, Wally.
I know.
It's like before it's pasteurized, it's like poisonous. It's like somehow poisonous.
You can drink it straight from the cow.
Yeah. But people just get enraged.
Yeah, they lose their fucking minds.
Wally and I are in a Signal group where 3 people have actually quit the Signal group over the raw milk discussion.
Yeah.
These are adults, grown-ass men, who get so upset over the discussion of raw milk that they have to leave a group.
Doge has been a point of contention where it's just like somebody will post a news article. They're like, "I'm done with the politics in this group." It's like, whoa.
So where did that come from?
Right? I don't know.
Like, what, are you not a grown-up? You're not a grown-ass man anymore?
It's odd.
Yes.
It's going to be a magic year, gentlemen. It's going to be a magic year.
It's going to be a crazy, wild one. But hey, listen, guys, we're well over 2 hours now. Why don't we take a minute, and if you guys all have something to say, why don't you go ahead and say it, and then we'll plan on doing this again, because this is actually a lot of fun. This went really cool.
I'm in.
Maybe next time, we'll constantly, maybe add some different people, or we'll figure that out, right? But we'll come up with a few topics, something that's like relevant to things that we're that are happening in our community, and we'll have one or two topics that we'll like dig in on, and then we'll just bullshit the rest of the time, which is fucking awesome.
You mean
know,
we're just not going to be blithering idiots for 2 hours like we were tonight?
I don't think we were, though. I think it was pretty awesome, to be honest with you. But that's me. So
it was good time. No, it was good stuff.
And these things grow over time too. So that's pretty awesome. Pretty close to monetizing, which is pretty badass, right?
That's cool, dude. That's very
I got
cool.
so many damn views. I was looking at my studio analytics, and like my views in the past 90 days are up 12,000%. And I'm like, what the hell?
Really?
Yeah, it's a lot.
That's pretty cool.
The video that still has the most views is B-Sides DC from 2018, and me ripping my brother's
2018.
Oh,
yep. B-Sides DC. It was the unforeseen consequences of data hacking and breaching, but it's been on the internet a while.
Is that you and me?
No, it was just me on that one.
Huh.
Yeah, and I was wearing the suit coat.
Wally, you need to. Okay, you need to take these videos, and you need to like find the hottest take out of the whole video and make that the most clickbaity title, and just like and post it. Okay, and take like a thumbnail of like you like with like the pondering emoji or something like that. Like, dude, you could take off.
Okay, I'll do that.
That thumbnail, doesn't it? It's all about that thumbnail.
Yeah, it is. And I'll download this and I'll put it as a video as well, and it'll also stay alive. So
Wally, what is it? 500? What is 500 subscribers on YouTube?
Yeah,
the starting monetization?
500 is the minimum threshold, and then but then there's like different tiers. So I've surpassed all the view counts, and the video counts. But
cool.
Yeah, so it's coming.
That'd be cool. Anus ice your thumbnail and it'll work. It's perfectly fine.
Look, obviously MJ is the pretty one. So if you want to bring people to the, if you want to get, your milkshake to the yard, I mean, you got to have, MJ on the picture right there, because he's just a beautiful man.
The funny thing, MJ looks 90% exactly like he did in 1997.
Yep.
Although
I noticed when showering, I had some gray hair, and I'm freaking out about it. Absolutely,
a lot of that going around.
You know what to do about it?
You know what? Shut up.
Yeah, it's moving up now, and I'm not happy about it. So
I'm panic stricken.
Oh my!
No, this was a good time, Wally. This was a really good time.
Yeah. No, I really enjoyed this quite a bit. I mean, it's almost reminiscent of COVID without any stress. It's like it's tons of fun. I like talking about this stuff I could never talk about for years, really, except for public talks, and a lot of things have become declassified. And I'm going to be doing a thing with a sensor that I thought was super duper sap, like way up there, like you don't like 40-year disclaimers on it. No, like literally the year I was still in country, there was already news articles, and I just never had the balls to search it because it was that sensitive at the time. So I'm like, fuck, now we got to talk about it, But there's a lot of that stuff coming out that I, I've kind of shut off from memory just because I didn't think I should ever discuss, and a lot of those things are wide in the open right now. And I'll do my due diligence to make sure I'm not going to go to prison, but. Sure. There's a big story to tell between intelligence and hacking, and, and how the whole cycle of things works. And, I think it's an important story to tell. And then how can people, even if they're not cyber savvy, how can you apply this little bit into your daily life and get something out of it in return, So
wow,
that's kind of the goal. The first goal of this is to educate the whole podcast. It's education, see the world from Wally's eyes. That's why I'm doing the data dumps thing. It's like, okay, I'm not taking a political view at X, Y, and Z, but here's what the data tells me, or here's what their own words tell me in most of the instances. So, I think there's not a lot of channels that are doing it. There's plenty of geopolitical channels, and there's plenty of politics channels, and, dudes who talk about pen testing and things like that. There's not a lot where a lot of people have their foot in both the intelligence world and the cyber world. So I think that's
all right. So just a quick question. Like when you say there's a story to tell, like do you think that in the future or like near future you might like do you do actual intel sort of like explore for like journalistic type purposes?
I can. I think that's my what do you call it? That what's that link I sent you? The Substack. Like I think Substack's going to be my out. That's going to be like my, path towards that, to actually writing and finding a subject and writing a whole article, and that includes all the intelligence and data and things like that. I think that's probably where it's going for sure.
Yeah, because that'd be so fun. That'd be so fun, like to combine, like if you like if there was like some sort of current event that happened, or like a direction we're moving as far as like geopolitically or whatever. Having like combining your intelligence with like the hacker tools and like actually gathering some cool intel and like reporting on it, that would actually be really fun.
I think so. I don't want to underestimate how much work some of this can be, like to get it to actually be correct. Here we go. How to be a great boss. MJ's the biggest troll here. Do you have that book, how to deal with having an enormous penis? The servant leader. But yeah, I think so. Like if I've applied for newspapers and think tanks and things like that do that, I don't think they see the value of having a guy like me on their staff, but I also don't think they know any better, right?
But I'm saying we gather the intel and then we report on it like in YouTube form. Like it's like there's like a whole new like almost like a movement of like journalists that publish their work in video form, which I think is kind of interesting. Anyway, I don't know. Maybe it probably would be a lot of work, but also, running a single VBot scan and throwing it into an analyst notebook takes like, an hour. So.
Yeah. Right. Well, true. That's fair enough. But then after I do it once, I already have it saved. So I can it's quicker the next time, but tenfold. So once I figure it out, it actually does get quicker. Find a topic. Let's try it. Why not?
Yeah, I think that'd be fun. Just like, like you give me some targets and like, I give you some data and like we can just, like we don't open it. We don't open it until the stream, and then we have a live reaction to the.
That's an interesting idea.
Like what? Those two things are connected. What?
That's an interesting.
That would be cool.
Idea.
That would be cool. Yeah. Don't put it together until we're live. Yeah, that's kind of cool. So, well, I tell you what, I do have a target. I'm working on the Biden laptop. The emails from the laptop, not the other stuff, but just the.
Well, it was nice knowing you, Wally. It was nice knowing you.
Well, I'm going to compare it to the DNC stuff I already have and the Clinton emails.
Nice knowing you, Wally.
But we know there's going to be connections. They're in the same party.
Yeah,
right?
Nice knowing you.
Well, remember, I'm not suicidal.
Yeah, so are all those other people.
Huh. Wally got shot 3 times from the back. It's suicide.
And then he fell
He
down.
figured it out. He's a smart guy. No, but I mean, there's just like we found with the DNC, but times 10. It's basically literally the DNC on crystal meth.
Literally the DNC on crystal meth.
So like the stuff that we had uncovered, I just put a video up the other day. I redid it. I changed some of the slides.
Well, what didn't get us into trouble was the fact that we were clear on, had this been anybody else's dump, we could have done exactly the same thing, right? It's just incidental that it was the DNC and this and that and the other thing. We could have done it with anybody's. That's kind of what kept us out of trouble, because we people try to get us in trouble for that.
Yeah.
And again,
there were some misunderstandings, and then there's some, there's some legitimate. People were thinking there's a legitimate issue of what's going to go out there. And it's like, well, we changed all the phone numbers to ASIC 75309 in Excel and,
Instead of
essential,
assuming we're disclosing things, ask us what we're doing.
ask,
which was the issue, but that's a separate thing. But again, my point is methodology is not political, right? It's just that happened to be the DNC. We could have done it with anybody's, and that's that was kind of our get out of jail free card, so to speak.
And actually, in the past 2 weeks, I read the RNC also got hacked, but it didn't get released for whatever reason, and it's still not available. I haven't found it anywhere, but if it's out there, I can typically find it. But so that would have been interesting. I would have liked to have done both at the same time. Like, let's say the RNC and DNC were equally breached, right? And then I had all that data. I would have loved to do the same thing with both of them, and then see who the insiders are, right? There's certainly some insider threats there.
The master between the DNC and the RNC would be insane.
It would be insane. Because there's lobbyists working both sides.
Dude, that's like that because that's the corruption. Like literally the Venn diagram in the middle is like corruption. And if you knew that, dude, you could just like, you're fired.
Or how did they put it? If the person who's telling you not to look there because of fraud is the one committing the fraud,
that's how it is. The person screeching the loudest and telling you asking what you're doing is the person who's committing the fraud. They're part of the grift.
I actually applied for Doge, and the application process is really weird compared to any other thing, as you would imagine with Elon. But it had a place where write something about these three things, like why you should be here, and I put links in there. I'm like, well, I'm good at this big data stuff. I can put it all together and I can show you all the connections. Watch this, during my time at McAfee, I have a patent. So does Dave, for literally a methodology that explains how to do this in the first place. And then I wrote as much in there. I was like, I only got one shot. Maybe they'll actually read it. Next steps to finish something new and good, and then I'm just going to tag the shit out of Elon on X and just like post the PowerPoints and PDFs and shit.
Oh yeah, Wally, did you see the interview with the guy who's like, what's his name? He's got the glasses and he has a beard and he's like an expert on the U.S.'s like all of the U.S.'s skeletons in the like closets. Like he knows all of them.
Mike Benz, the Mike Benz guy.
Yes.
The guy that was just on Rogan and just on Sean Ryan.
Yeah. Yeah, he's interesting because he actually, the enemies of this channel and the channels I associate myself with, right? They always say bring receipts. They claim we don't. It's like I always bring receipts, and that guy has every fucking receipt.
Yeah.
Every receipt. Every receipt. His Twitter feed is brilliant.
I honestly like I would go through all of it. I feel like but I feel like a lot of it would just make me angry. So I try not to get too deep into it. But it actually is amazing how much he knows about all the things that our country has done wrong. And like the ways that we're kind of screwing over other countries and other economies just to like, pad our pockets basically. But like, dang, dude, I kind of like it would suck having that job. It would suck like having to memorize all that information and tell it to people over and over and over again. I feel like that would just be challenging as like a lifestyle.
No, I totally agree. I mean, but he's focused on like one element, so he can stay within the realm of the U.S. government. But I don't think I'd say much. But I mean, these are not new tactics. That's what I would say. This is tradecraft that goes very, 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 very far back in history. Hundreds of years. It's an
established playbook, is what you're saying. Actually,
it's an established playbook, and if we didn't have organizations, let's say like USAID, that were the sharp end of the blade that's conducting those operations, that would be worse than
Well,
them actually doing it.
that's the point of soft power, right? You're making the soft power argument, which is influence.
Mhm.
You know, and if you're not influencing something, somebody else is influencing it, right? You know, and that's the point of soft power. And that goes back to, you know, the 1700s and the Barbary Coast, you know, and how we you know, we weren't allowed, because we didn't want to be seen as imperialists. We would sponsor, the US would sponsor schools as a way to bring Western and Christian thought into the what was called the Orient at the time, right? You know, and then they would spend money to create a school which taught economics and taught this and taught that and taught the other thing, with the goal of ultimately trying to convert the population. But the whole goal was soft power and influencing Western thought in Eastern areas and stuff. And again, that goes back to the Barbary Coast in the 1700s. You know, that's why we have a Navy. Blah, blah,
And a
blah.
Marine Corps. It's our first foreign war.
Dang. So okay. So
Thomas Jefferson went to the ambassador in London of Libya, or what it was. It wasn't called Libya at the time, but and he said, "Hey, we have no quarrel with the Islamic world. Like, why they took about 1.8 million merchants and Navy men and sailors and sold them into slavery, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
the response from the ambassador was just like, the Quran says we can, you know."
Yep.
He's like, and that's also when it started, you know, but don't fuck with our boats in America.
Yeah.
And Thomas Jefferson, one of his big things was like millions of dollars for the military, not a cent for tyranny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they tried,
So
but they still
all
they
intertwined.
still paid. They still paid a lot of ransom back in the day and stuff. So they would even go so far as, you know, providing warships to get certain amounts of people out and stuff like that. So they paid. You know, we've got a history of paying ransom and stuff there. By the way, it's Tunisia, Algiers, and Tripoli that you're talking about, not Libya.
Right.
But yes,
Okay.
well, you're fundamentally right. But we're going to go
Shores
down
of
a rabbit
Tripoli.
hole.
Yeah, we are. We're getting there on time too, guys. So why don't we wrap it up here? And
Cool.
these are awesome conversations. Love the ideas. We should do those for sure.
I love the reveal idea. The reveal idea is a really neat idea. I love that.
That'd be cool. That'd be really cool. Now you got my mind thinking. And yes, you're right, Woodrow. Spy versus spy. Yeah, absolutely. But hey, let's go around the house. We'll start with you, MJ. Would you like to close out with anything?
I miss you, buddy.
I miss you too.
so much. And yeah, I was just trying to. Dave's on my screen, so I had to clean it.
I know the problem exists.
Wow. The struggle is real, MJ.
Mm-hmm.
How about Mark and Joel?
I mean, thanks for having us on, Wally. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
That's all I got.
yeah, this has been awesome, Wally. Message to everyone, including Wally and especially Wally. Come to Hack SpaceCon because we're going to be at Hack SpaceCon and we're going to be doing Bebot training. So if anyone is interested in Bebot,
There you go.
yes,
2 hours.
Yes, it's a 2-hour training. It'll be me and Mark giving the training.
And here's what I'll do. I'll make a post about it, and I'll post the details. If I have a job by then, I'll go for sure. If I don't, well, I'll be there in spirit. You know? But I mean, that's the goal is to go, and that is down at the Kennedy Space Center, right? Again.
Yeah. Yes. Although the majority of the con this time is at the hotel.
Yeah.
So like the trainings are at the hotel now, which is kind of nice. There's only one day at the Space Center.
All right. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense than. Yeah, that does make a ton of sense.
That's
Cool.
cool.
Yeah.
Make it.
I hope I can make it too. We'll see. Fingers crossed. I mean, if I'm there, that means all good things are happening. So
That's true. Had to be said.
And Dave, you're up.
Yeah, like everybody else said, Wally, thanks for having me on. It was a great time. Really love the discussion. Love the nuclei stuff. Love the Bebot stuff, guys. I think that's some next level stuff. Love the idea of piping that into Analyst Notebook and doing some cool stuff there. This makes me pine for the OSINT days, Wally. It makes me miss what we did previously. So just when I thought I was out, you pulled me back in, baby.
Right.
And I'm in. You want to do this again? I'm in 100%.
Yeah, and maybe we should do this on some type of schedule at some point, right? I mean,
I'm
I
in.
think that would be cool.
No.
We'll find
Yeah.
something catchy, get some cool thumbnails, add some more cut-ins, you know.
Love it.
But here's what I'd close with. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Obviously, really appreciate the support. Like I said, please like and subscribe. I've heard that a million times and never thought about it until I was actually creating this stuff and giving it out to the masses. So, and also here's what I want everybody to think, this isn't a channel based on politics at all. I voted for people on both sides. We all have our differences, but data's data, right? We can come together and agree on things like that for sure. As I've said before, if anybody has any topics you want to cover, I mean, it's the Where's Wally podcast at gmail.com. Send me an email and let's talk about it. Anybody who wants to come up, hey, we'll set up a live or we'll do a video in private, whatever you're more comfortable with. We can, the same system to do these lives, we can record videos and I can do all the editing and all that. So, but thanks everybody. And we'll talk soon. So, all right, guys, have a good night. I'll talk to y'all later.
Bye.
All right, everybody. Peace out. Let me play my video. There we go.